I am rolling. Go for claps.
Here you go. I'm going to give you 3.5.
There's no half.
1, 2, 3, and then...
That's not 3.5 claps. That's 4 claps.
No, that last one was just me flicking one finger on the palm of my hand.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
It's
always a round number. I wanted to do something different.
You're trying to be creative with these claps all the time, but they're not supposed to be creative. They're just supposed to be so I can synchronize stuff. Okay?
Everything can be creative.
I guess you need to express your creativity in every possible venue that you can. But in the meantime, 3 claps from me. There we go.
Yeah,
3 claps.
3. Yeah, nice and functional. They were very functional. Shall we?
A half clap is taking your own hand and just closing it on itself. If there's going to be a half clap, that's a half clap, not flicking your other palm with a finger.
No, technically, a half clap would be just using one hand. I'm not going to pretend to wish you a happy new year because we do not lie to our listeners. And we saw in the new year together.
Yes, we did. We did. You invited the missus and I out for New Year's Eve in London because you were here for various reasons. Mm-hmm. And the 2 wives and us all went out to dinner and rung in the new year. You made me stay up late, which is not something that I normally really want to do.
You sprung some voodoo witchcraft on me as well because you were running a bit late for dinner. Uh-huh. And I was like, where are you, man? Where are you? And then you sent me this weird text where I had to accept something. And you know I hate accepting things I don't understand. But then I got to watch a little CGP grey symbol move around on a map and I could follow you crossing bridges and walking around London. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm. This is one of the new features of iOS 8 is the ability to temporarily share your location with somebody else. So these are the reasons why when you get that red update badge on your iPhone, you might want to click it because then I can do things like send you my location for the next hour so you can see how close we are to actually making it across the demilitarized zone of London where they shut down the inner part of the city. And there's police checks and dogs and all kinds of crazy stuff to get in. And you can see us trying to traverse this area and getting closer to you. So that's why you want to upgrade to the new stuff.
It was good fun. And then you crossed the bridge and I was and I love bridges. And I was watching you get closer to it and then I could screen capture the moment that you were actually on the bridge and it was brilliant.
Yes, you were very excited by this. So if we're meeting up in the future, I'll try to always remember to share my location as I am approaching.
Why can't I just have it all the time? Just as a little security blanket just to know where you are.
I'm not willing to extend that level of intimacy in our relationship at this stage or probably ever, Brady. I don't want you following my location 24 hours a day.
What places do you go that you wouldn't want me to know about?
That's not the point. It's just if you're sharing your location, with someone, it feels a bit like God is looking down upon you from the sky all the time. I don't like it. It feels almost claustrophobic to have your location tracked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's why I don't do it.
What was it like for that, 15 minutes or so when you said, okay, I'm going to share my location with Brady just so he knows how close I am to dinner? Uh-huh. Does that change the way you walk or are you conscious of that eye in the sky for those 15 minutes when you're scurrying along the bridge trying to get to me before dinner starts?
No, of course not, because I view that as a courtesy. This is the more modern equivalent of sending text messages every few minutes. Oh, I'm approaching the bridge. Oh, I've crossed the bridge. I'll be right there. Oh, I'm right here right now. You don't have to send those text messages. You can just see where I am. And I've done this before. They used to have a little bit more awkward way that you could do it. When I go traveling or on a business trip or to the Random Acts of Intelligence show this summer, then I'll share my location with my wife so she knows where I am and doesn't have to worry about what's going on. Then it's different. Then I'll share my location, but not normally.
But what about when we went into those caves in Alabama? She probably couldn't follow you then, and she would have been worried. You went to a cave with Gun-toting Destin, and then you disappeared off the map. That would just make her more worried.
Well, these are the trade-offs. Sometimes you're going to disappear off the map, and that's fine. That's fine. Maybe they should get Wi-Fi in that cave. That's what they should do.
They should. Did you enjoy dinner? It was one of those kind of taster menu things where they bring you out lots of little delicacies, wasn't it? And some of it was pretty London.
Why don't you tell people what you mean by pretty London?
It was all posh names that we didn't understand, like Booby Zoo's Eve, and it's flavored frothy air and, a shot glass of foam followed by some piece of meat the size of a 5-pence coin.
So I was a little bit worried when you first sent me the details about this dinner, because it was some multi-course dinner. I've never done this before. I assumed that they meant actual meals for the different courses. Like they were going
7 full meals.
Yeah. Well, this is what I was wondering. Is this Roman style? We're just going to be stuffing ourselves until we can't possibly eat, and they keep bringing food, and it's just more and more delicious every step of the way. And and you're just like, oh God, by midnight you're about ready to burst. That was not the case. What they actually do is bring you tiny portions of overly fancy food spread out over a long period of time. But I was shocked at how small these portions were. And so if anybody is ever in the situation where they're saying, oh, we're going to have a 14-course meal for you, don't worry. You're just going to get thimble-sized bits of food for several hours. You're not going to be overstuffed. So.
It was fancy pants food, though. Like, it was, I have been to one of these before at quite a famous restaurant in Nottingham, and my friend had been to it, and it was even more. It was something like 14 courses, and my friend who'd previously been told me that him and his wife had gone to McDonald's on the way home because they felt like they hadn't had enough food. So I went to that one thinking, oh, okay, this is, But I found the food really rich and filling, and likewise at ours on New Year's Eve, like I wasn't hungry at the end. Like I felt like I'd had enough food because it's quite rich, that food they bring you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't feel this way? Did you get a McDonald's on the way home? You can tell me.
No, I didn't get a McDonald's on the way home.
Did you get anything on the way home?
I'm trying to remember. I think maybe we did eat something when we got home. I don't remember exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I feel bad now.
It was a very small amount of food. I was surprised. I had no idea what to expect.
Well, that's what I mean. Fancy pants London. I assure you it didn't cost the same as a small amount of food.
Yes, I'm sure. Tiny amounts of food, you're going to spend an enormous amount of money.
Yeah.
But you can buy an enormous amount of ramen noodles for very little money. So that it's like the volume of food is inversely proportional to its price. That is a rule of the universe, I think. Mm-hmm.
This flight that crashed was called QZ8501.
Mm-hmm.
That is a real mouthful. Not very catchy. Not very easy to remember.
Is that the flight
That's the
number?
flight designation.
Right. Okay. So it's the
That's
flight number.
it was flight QZ8501 from some place in Indonesia,
right,
which I can't pronounce, to it was flying to Singapore, which I can pronounce. And that is a real mouthful, that designation, and I think that counts against it. It makes it quite a hard one. It makes it hard. It doesn't give it like an iconic name, but it does remind me of a lesson, or not a lesson, something that was told to me by a sub-editor at a newspaper when I was a new guy and some plane had crashed and we were preparing a report. Mm-hmm. And the first thing he said to me was, what was the plane flight number? Mm-hmm. And he didn't ask, how many people have died or where was it flying to or from or what kind of plane it was. He just wanted to know the flight number. And he said that's the first thing any kind of news sub-editor asks, because straight away that becomes like the iconic thing of any crash. It was flight, What were the Malaysian ones called? MH370 or MH17. They become like the iconic things of plane crashes. And they're always the first thing the headline writers want to know, that they can start creating their page and their look. And it did strike me, this AirAsia one, QZ8501. It's just too many numbers and not a nice combination of letters, and people won't remember that one for that reason.
Yeah, but isn't this the point at which news organizations are supposed to brand it with some version of their own?
Yeah,
calling it so that they, the AirAsia Crashtastrophe, and then they keep calling it the Crashtastrophe. Well, like, everybody likes to give it their own name.
Well, yeah,
it's like, you
don't work in newspapers. But
this is the snowpocalypse, right? And then we don't just say,
right. It needs, it needs like a town, like Lockerbie or something like that, or it needs a
right.
And this one is lacking. We don't know much about it yet, but it is lacking that. It's lacking a kind of
yeah. So I'm terribly sorry for newspaper writers the world over that this crash is not more sexy from a marketing perspective for them. My heart breaks open for their more difficult job.
You are a sympathetic man. So thank you, as usual, thank you to everyone who tweeted me as soon as a crash happens. I feel like this kind of merchant of death now, that everyone wants to tweet as soon as people die. And it's certainly not a situation I hope to create, but But I am still interested in plane crashes, and I do, I certainly find out about these things even quicker than I ever imagined possible, thanks to a combination of Twitter and my reputation for being interested in plane crashes.
There you go.
Yeah. I wonder how many people think like a plane crashes and they're like, oh, I must tweet that guy with the Aussie accent from Hello Internet and tell him because...
But you must know, you get all those tweets.
Yeah.
If anybody knows how many people
I don't need to wonder,
think
do I?
that,
I am the one.
You are the one person who
I have
knows.
the data. I'll go and do an analysis. All right.
But I have often wondered, like, if I could press a button that would erase all knowledge of history from humanity, would I press that button? As in, nothing changes. We don't forget the current state of the world, right? But people just forget anything about history. You just, wake up tomorrow and we're just, oh, right. Obviously, I still know I'm an American. I'm living in the UK. Everybody in the UK knows the UK is a country, but they just forget all of the relations that, say, the UK ever had with France or with Ireland or with India, or that Germany had with Poland, or any of these kinds of things.
So removing like the kind of the baggage and the stereotypes and the things like that.
Yeah, just like, I mean it quite literally, removing all knowledge of like the politics of history.
Yeah.
Just all those books got burned and everybody forgot. I would argue that like, I think that could be a better world. I honestly think I would be pretty tempted to press that button and set alight all knowledge of human history.
So you don't subscribe to this, we learn from our mistakes and that's why history is important,
No, that's I mean, come on. If you think about that for 2 seconds, that's obviously a load of bull, that whole notion, right?
I think that sometimes too, actually, yeah.
It's so wrong. That is the kind of thing historians like to tell everybody. Oh, it's really important. We know all this history so we can learn from it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, we've done a great job of learning from that history. I'm glad we've never made the same mistake twice. That was good job, historians. So I would argue that I think that could be a better world. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me on this point?
I think it'd be good for you because you wouldn't bury your nose in history books and maybe you'd live with the rest of us in the now.
First of all, you still keep thinking, I don't read history. Like, I am remarkably uninterested in history. You think that I'm some sort of like history buff, but I assure you, sir, I am not.
Do you watch your videos?
Do you watch my videos? If you actually watch them, you will notice how little history there actually is in those things. Right? Everybody thinks my videos are about history, but go back and look at them. They are not. Last book that could be considered a history book I read was like a couple years ago. Anyway, aside from your terrible concern that I follow the news in detail now, would you be at all tempted to press the button to erase? I know you wouldn't, but I'm just like, hypothetically, do you think it could be a better world if you were to erase all of knowledge of history from humanity?
My instinct is that it would be a bad idea.
And why do you think it would be a bad idea?
Because I love history and heritage. I love that we got here because of a story, and I would hate to lose that story, for better or worse. I love that we are a chapter in an amazing book, and I don't want to lose the book.
But you're acknowledging that like the book might be causing problems.
Yep.
So I feel like you agree with me, but you still wouldn't press the button. I don't know. It's something that I've run into here in the UK in particular, which I have found just weird, is a particular kind of like people really not liking other people who are from ludicrously short distances away.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I mean, like I have known, I'll just, you can pick almost any pair of these, but I'll just pick one in particular, which is I have known Welsh people who passionately hate English people, just all English people.
I know. And I can see Wales from my window right now.
Yeah. For stuff that happened 900 years ago. Right. And I have conversations with these people and they seem like really, really dead set about it. Now, before anybody gets angry, you can do this with any combination you want. I know English people who hate Scottish people. I know Scottish people who hate, like, not in a jokey way, but in a serious way that like they bear resentment. And that to me is just beyond stupid. It's like there's no reason for this. Everybody who was involved in this is long dead and buried in the ground. I don't understand this attachment to people from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, like it affects your life at all now. Yeah. You're a dude in Wales, and it's, whatever. You can just live your life the way you want to. So that's kind of why I often think that like knowledge that England screwed over Wales 900 years ago, you know what? It might just be better if that wasn't around anymore, if we just erased all of history. And I feel like you are right in that the news in some sense is the vanguard of what will eventually become history.
Yeah.
And so to me, it just seems like an extension of, I was like, you want me to follow the news, but I would press a button that would erase all of history from knowledge if I could. So in some ways, I'm willing to go much, much further on this.
But what is the point of life if it isn't stories? And like, what is it? Just to have X number of dollars in the bank when you die? Like, well, if you haven't got stories and stuff that happened, good stuff and bad stuff and happy times and sad times, like, if you haven't got that,
my life is that. There was the story of my life, but I mean, how far back can you honestly trace your family? And how much would it matter if you discovered at some point that, you did some of the genealogy wrong and it was some other family that was your past family, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Right. Let me give you an example of empathy, right? And the kind of history of this, which is, I don't know, this might be a little bit sensitive for people. So I'll try to preface this. I don't even know how to preface this, but so, I mentioned a few times I've done some road trips across the United States. This has ended up being a really serious episode. Sorry, everybody. I've ended up doing a couple road trips across the US. And they're very interesting things to do. If you ever have the ability to do it, I highly recommend it. But on one of those trips, I'm not going to say exactly where, somewhere in America, we were driving across a very large Indian reservation. My wife was with me at the time. And I've traveled around the world. Like, I have been to many places. I can honestly say that this was one of the most horrifically poor places I have ever seen in my life. And my wife, who is much more well-traveled than I, she was like, she's never seen poverty like this. It was just a horrible, horrible place. And to me, this is the kind of thing where it's like, look, these people are in a terrible situation that we kind of this is a particular America problem, but that America kind of allows to exist for historical reasons. I honestly think that if we woke up tomorrow and everybody forgot everything that there ever was to know about colonialism and, what happened with America and the Native Americans, and we just woke up tomorrow and couldn't remember anything, but just looked around and said, why on earth is there this group of people in poverty that we accept nowhere else in the country? We wouldn't let that stand. And I feel like this is another example of where history is no good. It doesn't help. And what you care about is what is the situation of people today? Are there people who need help? Let's try to get them help. And I don't really care what the historical reasons are, as to how they got there. I care how much help they need today. I don't know. I'm getting kind of off track here, but that's sort of how I feel about that.
It's the start of a good argument for a role of the media. What's going on today? Where do things need to be done today? I know it's this idealized media, not the, what's Kim Kardashian wearing.
And can I ask you, how much is the media focusing on that? None. Exactly none.
No, that's I can't speak to Indian reservations, but it's not true that there are no parts of the media that aren't highlighting places where there are serious problems in the world. Yeah.
We talk about the media highlighting, places where there's problems in the world. Fine. To me, this is like a fixable problem within in a confined region that is allowed to exist. If we didn't have historical knowledge of it, it wouldn't be allowed to stay the way it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But that button's never going to exist, whereas the news media does exist and can can do some stuff. But I'm not making the case for the news media as a force for good. That's not particularly interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I think it's a pretty lame argument when you say you should watch it because it's the fourth estate and it will make the world a better place.
Yeah.
I make the argument to you that you should follow the news and stuff that's in the media just because you're a citizen of the world. And I think it's good for you to know what the other citizens are up to in some way. And you make a very good case why you don't. And as I said at the very start, I respect it, but it just had been on my mind, and we've certainly devoted a lot of time to it. So maybe we should move on to more important issues. And she said, well, if that's going to happen, if they find one that's going to hit the Earth, I don't want to know. I hope they don't tell us.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a little discussion about that, and I think that's quite interesting. And I wonder what CGP Grey's position on this is. If they found an asteroid that was definitely going to, it's going to be a global killer or whatever they call it in Armageddon. If they found one that was going to obliterate us, and there's nothing they could do because, Armageddon aside, there probably is nothing they can do about one that big. Would you want to know if it's a week away or something?
Well, first of all, I would put money on the table, and I would bet that you would not want to know. Am I right?
My instinctive answer is that I would want to know.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is quite surprising. Why would you want to know? I just lost some money here. I mean, not really. I lost my theoretical money, but I would have been certain enough to bet on this.
Can I have a point on the scoreboard? The theoretical scoreboard of rightness and wrongness. Can I have a point?
I don't think that works for our opinions of stuff. It's about being
facts.
Yeah, it's about facts.
Well, the fact is that you thought I would think one thing and I thought the other. So you are factually incorrect.
I'm not. Yes, technically I am factually incorrect, but I'm not going to count that.
Okay.
But I'm genuinely surprised though. Why would you want to know?
I'm fine. Let me try and put it into words. It's not something I have a bit of a macabre interest in, death, hence a macabre interest, as evidenced by playing Crash Corner. So, I don't know. I feel like if I had a finite amount of time left, I'd want to do things. And I know there's no point like writing a will or getting my affairs in order if the planet's about to be obliterated. But
right.
I feel like, I wouldn't want to get caught with my pants down. I'd want to have done a few things that I haven't done, or I'd want to be ready. I'd want to, I see the benefit of not seeing it coming, right? I see the benefit of just dying in your sleep and not having the anxiety and the worries that come with it. Because no doubt they overcome everything. But I think I'm just I want to know kind of guy. It's like me being more into the news than you. I'm just a guy that wants to know stuff. I don't like not knowing. Mm-hmm. And you're quite happy not knowing. You would presumably you would not want to know, or
what are you, crazy? Of course I'd want to know.
You would want to know.
Yes.
Well, I just lost a point on the scoreboard.
Yeah, there we go. Even if I had awarded you a point,
yeah.
You just lost it now. Of course I would want to know.
Why?
Ideally, I would want to be the only one who knows. If I could arrange it in such a way that I was the only person who knew, that would be perfect.
Yeah. I can see why you'd want to be the only one because of the inevitable consequences of everyone in the world knowing.
Right.
But that aside, why would you want to know? Like, if you've got a week, what do you want to do?
It's the same thing. If I have a week, it feels like, well, I might as well not work on this video that's been frustrating me. I can just drop that. And it's like, the past 2 weeks have been an incredibly frustrating experience, but you only have a week of life left. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to finish this. There's no point in finishing this.
What about that week of anxiety of, everything's going to be over and what happened?
I would feel no anxiety in this situation.
You would feel no anxiety if an asteroid was about to smash into our planet and kill everyone in a week. You would be completely relaxed about that.
Relaxed implies I'd be like, asteroid, no asteroid. It's indifferent to me. That's not the case at all. I would rather there be no asteroid than there be an asteroid.
Yeah.
But if I knew for certain that the world was going to end in a week, I would not feel anxiety about this because especially if it's one of these situations where it's like, we just don't have a chance, right? Oh, there's the asteroid. We can't launch a space program or anything. The anxiety would be under a circumstance where, say, we spot it, but it's a year away and we're 99% certain it's going to hit. And maybe we can pull a Hail Mary here and get this thing off our path. And like, that's an anxious situation because the outcome is uncertain. And then you have to deal with a large amount of time until the uncertainty is resolved. That's no good. But if it was like a done deal, well, there's nothing I can do about it. So it's not a thing to be anxious about.
That's crazy.
That's not crazy. That's completely reasonable. Okay, here's even if you don't think that you could feel the way that I feel, don't you agree that position is reasonable?
I think it would be reasonable if you were a robot. It would be reasonable if you were not a human who is a bit afraid of dying. Like, if you have no fear of death, okay, that's completely reasonable. If you have a fear of death and what happens next or not next, or just don't want to die because you just like being alive, I think it would be natural to be very anxious in that week.
I very much like being alive.
I know you do.
And I can say that I have no fear of death. I have a fear about how I might die.
How are you why are you afraid of how you would die?
Well, because you can die in numerous horrific ways.
Right?
People can and do daily die in horrible, horrible ways.
Yes.
Actually, well, that's not how I would like my last moments to be.
Yeah.
Is in the worst agony I have ever experienced. So that's why I can say, like, I'm concerned about how I would die. But the dead part, being dead, is easy. And I don't think being dead is something to be anxious about.
Do you think going out with everyone else on Earth in a huge asteroid impact would be a good way to go? Do you think, like, of all the different ways to die, normally it's a very personal thing. Do you think that would be a good one? Like, let's all just go together in a blaze of glory and have the whole planet go in this catastrophic, awesome space collision? How would you rate that on the rankings of the ways that you would or would not like to leave your mortal coil?
I would rank that's pretty low. I would not want that would not be like, ooh, in my top 10 ways to go. I'd love to take everybody with me.
You're not taking them with you. I would have thought it would kind of appeal to you in a way.
No, this holds no appeal to me to have some kind of blaze of glory for the whole species just because I'm going to die. That's terrible. I think you'd have to be some kind of, well, I mean, maybe this is what you want, but I feel like you'd have to be some kind of amazing narcissist to think that would be an awesome way to die, to have the whole world go with you in a blaze of glory. Now I will ask you, is that what you think is a great way to go, Brady?
No, I don't, because, there are other people, kicking around on the Earth who I kind of like, and I want them to,
right.
I don't want them to go just because I'm gone. But
yeah, exactly.
But we will all go. So why not all go holding hands? But the other thing is, I don't want humans to be wiped out. I can't believe we're having this conversation. I can't believe I just said, oh no, I don't want humans to be wiped out. I don't want humans to be wiped out. But I do find something really kind of, on a galactic scale, I do find something really cool about whole planets being wiped out in collisions. Like, I think that's really cool that happens. Like, it's really interesting that such huge things happen.
It certainly is interesting that such huge things happen, but if there are sentient species on those planets, boy, is that a tragedy.
That's like the poetry of it, isn't it? Isn't it amazing that, that a sentient species can, over millions of years, develop to some pinnacle or some great place, and then just arbitrarily a piece of rock, says, "No, thanks for playing."
I can sort of see what you're saying, but I also can't imagine anything more tragic.
Yeah, but that's the beauty. Tragedy is a beautiful thing.
I'm gonna go with no.
That Shakespeare guy did well from it.
I understand that Shakespeare wrote tragedies.
People like a tragedy. People love a good tragedy.
I am a fan of tragedy in my drama. I am not a fan of tragedy in the actual universe. The way I put it.
Do you think if the authorities found out an asteroid was going to hit us, they would tell us?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. If I was in charge of I'm in charge of Greystonia or whatever, and my scientific teams discover that the asteroid is on its way, I would totally implement a let's just keep this quiet policy. The uncertainty of how everything would go could be quite high. And I could imagine that would be quite disastrous. I guess the bottom line is I would not trust other people to act in the way that I would act in the final week of existence.
What's your final week like? Is it a very peaceful time, is it? It's not just spend all my money and go crazy.
Well, I mean, who's going to take your money? Oh, you spend all my money to who? Someone has to accept your money.
No, but if you're the only one who knows, presumably your final week would be very decadent because you would just obviously exhaust your bank account.
Yeah, I'm not. I think it would be relatively relaxed. I think I would probably go someplace just like relaxing with my loved ones, and that would be that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go out with like I have to spend all this money right now on all the things that I can possibly think of.
Would you call me or say anything to me?
I guess it depends on how well I can think you keep a secret.
But even if you weren't going to tell me, would you like just call up and say, you're a nice guy and I enjoy doing the podcast with you? And or do you think that would make me suspicious?
You'd be suspicious now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
After we've had this conversation. I mean, I've never called you up spontaneously ever. And so if I did one day call you up and just said like, hey, Brady, just want to let you know, you're like an A+ guy and totally love doing this podcast with you.
I'd be like, Gray, is there an asteroid coming?
That's exactly it. You would assume I was dying or everyone in the world was dying. Right? I think you would be naturally quite suspicious with that phone call.
Yeah.
Today I did the thing I usually do, which is ask on Twitter if anybody has any questions for us or things that we should talk about. And there's actually a related question here.
Yeah.
Which is, I'll ask you this first. This is from Twitter.
Yep.
Which of us do you think would survive longer if there was a zombie apocalypse?
Me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why do you think you?
I think I would be more willing to get my hands dirty and do violent things. I've been watching a lot of Walking Dead lately, so I'm also well prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So I know exactly what to do and like where to hit them. And that's a great show, by the way, Walking Dead. I've never been into zombie stuff. I've never been into zombie movies and that. And my wife said, I want to start watching this Walking Dead. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And gee, it's good. Do you watch it? Have you watched it?
Yeah, I've watched it. I think there are complaints to be had about the show.
Yeah.
But I think its good moments are very good.
Yeah.
But there are some sections that are not very good.
Yeah. That's just generally the stories are pretty good. Like I'm just into the people. Like and the zombies almost have become peripheral to the show. Like they're just like the hazard. Like they're just the generic hazard that is just always there. Who do you think would last longer in a zombie apocalypse of the two of us?
There is no doubt about it that it would be you.
Yeah.
As we've discussed previously, you are hard as nails.
That's so not true, but I loved hearing you say it.
And if there was a real zombie apocalypse, I'm checking out right then and there. I don't need to be around for any of these horrors. If civilization has really gone down and it's a we need to start over time, forget it. You go on without me, everyone.
Is there no fight in you? Haven't you got a bit of fight? There's no I don't know. I just think I'm like this with plane crashes. I just think I'd survive. I think for some reason I just think, oh yeah, it would be bad, but I'd get by.
The flip side of this is it'd probably also be better for everybody if I did just take myself out, as I actually really would. But if for some reason I did survive the zombie apocalypse and I decided like I'm going to go on, I always find myself siding with the more ruthless characters and situations in any kind of zombie apocalypse fiction. Right? We always have the good guy who wants to do the right thing. And then the villain, is always portrayed as like, oh, look at that meanie head. But I'm often thinking like, no, this is a zombie apocalypse. Like you got to do whatever it takes to survive. I have a little story that ultimately has a little moral at the end of it.
Wow.
So I'm gonna tell this.
Do it. I'm quite excited.
It's not actually that exciting, but yeah, about a week and a half ago.
Yeah. You could have started with Once Upon a Time.
Once upon a time, a week and a half ago in my flat.
Yeah.
Right. This is not a fantasy story. I was getting ready to do my regular work routine. So I'm getting up in the morning, unusually busy this last week and this current week. I have a couple deadlines that I need to hit, which is not normally the case for me. So lots of stuff to do. I can't afford delays.
What time do you get up?
Well, at the moment, I am getting up at about 6:30.
Sorry, that was an involuntary noise. I didn't know that time existed.
You're still snoozing for an hour and a half or 2.5 hours? When do you get up?
6:30 is the time that sometimes I have to get up and let the puppy out for a wee before I go back to bed for a bit more sleep.
Well, 6:30 works. This happens to be the time with anyway, get up at 6:30, but my wife has gone off to work. I'm getting ready, starting the day. You are still snoozing, probably. And so, we've discussed before, I have my little routine that has to go just the way that I want it to go. I need to make my breakfast in a particular way, have everything needs to be just so that I can kind of get into a regular workday. And it always sounds crazy, but if things go wrong, I've just learned from experience, it spells disaster for the amount of stuff I can actually get done. That's just the way things are. But so on this particular morning, something happened to be different, which is that our dishwasher did not run overnight because it didn't happen to be closed all the way. So it couldn't run automatically. So we didn't have clean dishes. So I had to go get a different cup for my coffee.
No, this was a sign. This was a sign from above that you should have McDonald's breakfast.
Oh, yeah? Is that how you would interpret this?
Yeah. But you take this as a sign you have to go and get a different cup.
Yeah, we have some slightly smaller cups available in the cupboard, which I don't like to use for coffee, but we have them there.
Okay.
But these are not the cups that I wanted to use.
Okay.
And I'm not going to McDonald's. So I take out the cup. Now, my wife has already gone off to work. There was some coffee that was made, but I need to reheat it like I always do. So I pour out some coffee into the slightly smaller cup, put it in the microwave, and I just put it on the normal time, same time every morning. I know how much I want to microwave the coffee. Everything is always the same. Except this morning, the cup is different. Now, seems like such a small thing, doesn't it? But you know about the property of fluids either superheating or supercooling, yes? Right. So you can do this thing with fluids where if you put them in a very smooth container, which this cup happens to be, where there's no cracks or nothing on the inside, you can heat or cool them past their boiling or freezing point.
Yeah.
So the coolest one to see is when things go past the freezing point, where the water is colder than zero. It should be frozen, but it isn't. It still looks like water. And then you just tap it, or you just drop a tiny piece of dust in it, and it kind of freezes almost instantaneously.
Yeah.
And then you have the reverse, which is superheated fluid, when it goes past the boiling point, but it doesn't boil because there's no little surface on the inside for any bubbles to start. So now, unbeknownst to me, because the cup was slightly smaller, because there was less fluid in the cup, but I was still using the same time that I always use to microwave my coffee.
Which is what?
On our microwave, it is 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But our microwave is ridiculously powerful, even on its lowest setting.
Yeah.
It's like a nuclear microwave, as far as I can tell. Like power setting 1, and everything still has to be cooked for less than 2 minutes. It's just 3 minutes. Oh, no, it's going to just burst into flames.
Yeah.
So I put it in. And now here's where the whole morning, my whole day, and unbeknownst to me, my whole week is about to change.
Yeah.
I reach in, I take out the cup of coffee, grab it in my left hand. With my right hand, I take a spoon that I go to stir the coffee with, just like every time, little tiny spoon. I put the little spoon in the coffee, and the fluid is superheated. This is the moment that it was waiting for. If you haven't seen it, it's very strange. It's not like when water boils, it boils from the bottom. When something is superheated, it boils from everywhere all of a sudden. Every point of it suddenly becomes a bubble of steaming coffee at this stage. And so it pours all over my hand that I'm holding, all over if you imagine you're holding a cup of coffee in your hand, the complete top of my hand, down the back, around my thumb, over the webbing, and down my index finger, and a tiny bit on my palm.
Did you make any noise or say anything? Or
I cursed really loudly.
Really? Which word? What letter does it start with?
It was fuck. I know for you this is terrifying. Or this would have broken your streak. I need to ask if this happens to you, because it happens to me. I find this strange. If I get hurt in a surprised way, like say, you get up in the middle of the night and you're stumbling into the bathroom and you smash your toe or something, or your shin against the wall. Not only does it hurt, but I find for maybe 2 or 3 seconds, my brain just goes into Hulk mode. It's like, I'm not only hurt, but I'm filled with instant rage. And it's like you want to just smash and destroy the wall that has dared hurt me. Do you have this reaction?
Yeah. I think I know what you mean. I think that is normal.
Right?
Have a few seconds of anger. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just, ow, I'm hurt. It's like an outward projection. What is the thing that hurt me? How can I possibly destroy it?
That must be some evolutionary thing, mustn't it? Some little 5-second power up in case it was a mammoth that jumped out from behind the cave to attack you or something.
Yeah, it absolutely has to be. That's the only thing that makes sense. Is it's your body going, do we need to kill a tiger right now? Right? We're hurt. We don't exactly
I just stubbed my toe.
Right. No, we don't know what it is. But like all of the adrenaline just dumps into your system immediately.
Yeah.
And so I had this exact same thing happen with me with the coffee, where I was furious at the cup and reflexively just threw it against the wall, which is not the best thing to do as well. So there is to this day a kind of huge stain of coffee against one of the walls in our flat, which is
oh my goodness,
very frustrating.
How unrational of you.
Well, this is also, I find, one of these funny moments where you realize you're not as in control of your mind as you think you are, and these little reflexes. Like, I think I could have no more not thrown the coffee than when the doctor hits your knee with a little hammer and your leg goes out. Right? It's like, I don't do that. It just happens. It's like,
the first time that ever happened, the doctor got the hammer out and hit me on the knee.
Yeah.
I never believed that was a real thing. I thought it was just something that happened in like Bugs Bunny cartoons. When it really happened, I thought that was awesome.
How were you, like 5? You must have been a little
I
kid.
was like much older, and
Really?
I'd never seen it happen before. I was like, oh wow, this is real.
It suddenly occurs to me, I have no idea why the doctors do it. Do they just do it because it's funny?
I don't know.
What can that... If there's any doctors, please let us know. What can that possibly be showing? You're in good knee health? I have no idea what that could possibly be.
You were saying there was a message to your story.
Well, hold on. I'll get there.
What? There's more to come.
There's more to come. There's
Wow.
more to... It's not just, I smashed a cup of coffee, right?
Okay, go on. Don't let me stop you.
Whenever you burn yourself, you just have to run cold water over it.
Yeah.
And it immediately becomes apparent that this is not a normal burn, right? That this is a much worse burn than I've ever had before. I'm looking at my skin and thinking, ooh, that does not look good. This does not look like normal burns. So I'm running my hand under the water for as long as I can. And then I realize, okay, I need to figure out what's going on. Go to my computer, load up the internet. I need to find out about burns. And let me tell you, you will never realize how slow a fast computer is than when your hand feels like it's on fire and you're trying to look up information about burn injuries. Because it's like, click Safari. I want Safari open now, right? Not 5 dock bounces from now. Right now.
No.
I can't wait for this. And then it's like, loading up Google.
Oh, here's the Adobe updater.
Yeah, I know. It's like, gah! It felt like it took 5 minutes to get to the NHS's thing about burns.
You have to reinstall Acrobat to read this NHS document.
Do you want to fill out a survey about our website and how helpful you're finding it? No! Right? I just need this information immediately. And the bottom line was the website told me, you obviously have a 2nd-degree burn. This is something you need to actually have someone take a look at. Because is your hand blistering immediately? Yes, it's a 2nd-degree burn. This is not a superficial burn. You actually need to go into the hospital. So great. Now I'm going to the hospital.
You went to hospital?
Yeah, I went to the accident and emergency.
You didn't tell me this.
Was I supposed to tell you this?
Yes.
Was I supposed to tweet you from the hospital or something?
Well, not tweet me, but you should have sent me a message at some point.
Were you going to come down?
I shouldn't be finding out my mate went to hospital for the first time on a podcast.
Well, I went to accident and emergency. I wasn't like in a coma. I went to accident and emergency.
If you were in a coma, I'd forgive you for not contacting me.
What were you going to do? Were you going to come down from Bristol and help me out?
No, but you tell your mates these things when you get 2nd-degree burns and go to hospital.
I'm sorry, I was a little preoccupied at the time.
Oh, well, you didn't have to tell me, at the time, but maybe afterwards or something.
I was busy later. Later, things were busy, but at the time, I wasn't thinking about the stuff. My wife didn't find out until she came home from work. Like, what was she going to do? Come home from work? No, there's nothing she can do. I'm just going to accident and emergency.
Still tell her. Did she tell you off for not telling her?
Sort of.
Yes, I bloody bet she did.
But then she realized that I was correct. That there was no need for her to realize.
She's married to an idiot.
No, it's not the case at all. I feel like we're getting derailed. Anyway, so I go to accident and emergency, and what I'm hoping is happening there is I've been there before with my wife for some other things. They have like 3 level of triage doctor, and I'm hoping that I just get there and they look at this and go, "Oh, you big baby, just go home." Right? It's just a bad burn. Don't waste our time with this. But no, unfortunately, each level of triage person looks at it and goes, the next level of triage person needs to look at this. You can't go home yet. So anyway, I ended up spending like 3 hours at A&E going through various triage levels until I saw the doctor person who was like, "Yep, that's a bad burn." It's like not bad enough for a skin graft, but bad enough that we needed to look at it. And they gave me some painkillers and they bandaged it up. And so I ended up with this bandage across all of my thumb and my finger and the palm of my hand, and just this totally useless hand that felt like it was on fire all the time. And, as a little side note here, have you ever tried to meditate, Brady?
No.
No. I have been attempting to do not meditation, but something called mindfulness over the past couple of months. Not very successfully, I have to say.
What is wrong with you?
That I've been trying to do meditation?
You're just not the man I used to know.
Well, here's the thing. This sounds to me like just craziness.
Yeah.
Mindfulness and meditation. We can get off on a whole different topic on this some point. But I have heard from enough people that I trust who are also very successful, get stuff done kind of people, that this is a thing worth trying. And so I'm always up for trying stuff if enough reliable people tell me about it. So I thought, okay, I'll give this a try. But so in mindfulness, there's this thing that you're supposed to kind of become aware of, which is that thoughts and sensation are like appearances in consciousness, and to detach yourself from them. So it's like, oh, breathing is happening. I'm aware that breathing is happening, but you don't think of it as like, I'm the one who's breathing. You're just aware of this thing and you like distance yourself from it.
Okay.
And so when I had burned my hand, I thought for a moment, okay, this incredible pain, like it's an object in my consciousness, but I can disassociate from it. Nope, you are totally worthless to me right now, mindfulness practice. Goodbye, I do not have time for this. Yes, triage doctor, please give me that painkiller right now, immediately
you got it all
at
wrong,
this moment.
Gray. You don't need mindfulness and, whatever, crystal bowls and candles. You know what you need? You just need to be hard as nails. You just got to think, be hard as nails. What would Brady do? He'd be hard as nails.
Yeah. What would you do? Just look firmly into the horizon for a few moments?
I'd just crack on. I'd just be like, all right, do what you got to do, doctor. Don't even tell me. Just do it. Just fix it. Fix it, and I can go back to work.
I had to do something while I'm sitting around an accident emergency for a while, and it's
you didn't have to do all that mindfulness and Zen.
All I'm doing is sitting there for a couple of seconds and realizing immediately that it's totally worhless in my situation.
I still can't believe you didn't tell me this happened. Please tell me you didn't tell me because you wanted to save it for the podcast.
No, honestly, it just didn't come up. It was not relevant to any of our conversations that we've had.
It shouldn't have to come up. You should just tell me.
Okay.
I told you when my wife had a haircut.
Yeah, that was interesting. It was a very good haircut. There was nothing you could have done to help with the situation.
I'm not saying I could have helped, but
right.
All right, fine, be that way.
I'm not being anyway. It just honestly, it just didn't cross my mind. I'm sorry. I will try to have I'm going to start sending you all kinds of stuff. I'm going to let you know what I'm doing every day.
You don't have to tell me everything you do, right? We just need to have a line. And I think going to accident and emergency with a burnt hand that gets bandaged up crosses the line of, I'll tell my mate this at some point this week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to keep that in mind in the future.
All right.
But anyway,
I'll help you through this, all right? I'll help you through it. Like, if you send me something you didn't need to tell me, I'll tell you. And together, I will teach you.
You'll teach me where the line is?
I will teach you where the line is of what you tell your friends.
Do you want to know when my wife gets a haircut?
If it's, yeah, maybe. If it's an interesting one.
Okay.
If it's like, a radical departure, yeah.
The radical departure.
Yeah, she's had a haircut. It's really, she's changed colour or it's really different now. Yeah.
Okay.
That's interesting.
All right.
That's not essential. That's not essential.
Okay.
That depends.
All right.
But hospitalization is definitely the other side of the line.
Again, hospitalization is greatly over exaggerating this story. Okay. It's a visit to accident emergency. That's what it was.
Okay.
Anyway, the bottom line, the moral of the story is never change your routines. That's the moral of the story. Don't let even the slightest thing be different, because one tiny difference, a different cup of coffee, ended up with me having a hand at 50% operational capacity for about a week during one of the busiest times that I currently have. And I'm still actually quite worried about it, because even though it's like kind of healed. Oh, the doctor gave me this. Here's the thing you never want to hear from a doctor. Side note here. It's like, oh, by the way, when it's healing, all that skin, it might turn totally brown and just kind of slosh off. It's like, don't worry about that. It's fine. Like if it turns dark brown, that's okay. That's supposed to happen. Don't worry. You don't need to come back for that. It's like, oh, okay. It's like, if it gets deeply infected though, like you might need to come back for that. Like you got to watch all those blisters, because they could get infected and you might die. Like, oh, great. Okay. But yeah, so a very slight change in my daily routine led to basically like a week and possibly much, much longer of limited capacity with one hand, which is very frustrating, all because of a different coffee cup. So never change anything. Keep everything the same every day. The girl from Ipanema.
Now I'm concentrating so much on singing the song that Here we go.
Where should we be? Should we begin at the beginning? How I came across coffee? Maybe
that's a very good place to start.
Story. Okay. This story starts with the woman who would become my wife, who is now my wife, who is a total drug pusher when it comes to coffee. It's like she's getting a cut from the caffeine and coffee bean industries, because she pushes coffee on absolutely everyone she comes in contact to who doesn't already drink coffee.
I could be her nemesis.
Yeah, you very well may be. And I was one of her early case projects, because I mean this is now 10 years ago, I guess. Just trying to ballpark it. I didn't really drink coffee, and this was before I was in the professional world working as a teacher and you know, any of this. I was just an idiot, you know, hanging out in life, not really doing anything in particular. Mm-hmm. But so my wife and I were traveling in America, and we were in Las Vegas, and she was starting her, you need to get on coffee thing here. And I was opposed to it. I like the smell. I didn't like the taste. But she used what is the gateway drug for very many people to getting into coffee, which is Starbucks Frappuccinos, right, which are basically ice cream shakes. There's a Starbucks that is in the Luxor Hotel, where we were staying, the Big Pyramid one. And so I had a Java chip Frappuccino there, and this was the gateway drug. I thought, this isn't bad. And there's like little chunks of coffee beans in there. And from this, my wife kind of got me hooked on those, and then eventually transitioned me into coffee. And so I've gone through like a whole bunch of phases, and I'm in a new phase now. But I went to like lattes. For a while, I did drink instant coffee when I was a teacher, which people find absolutely horrifying. But you got to do what you got to do. You need coffee all day long, and you need it right away. And you can't possibly have like roasting stuff in a school. But yeah, so I drank lattes, and now I am drinking actual coffee. So if we go into our kitchen, I was looking at it today, and there are, I think, depending on how you want to count it, 4 or 5 pieces of equipment that are related to coffee production that are there. So we have a drip coffee pot. We have a burr grinder. My wife also has one of those machines that has the little capsules that you put the capsule in and it makes the coffee. I don't know if you know about this.
Yeah, I know that.
You know, I forget the name for them. I can't remember. People will know. They always make me think of, have you ever seen RoboCop 2, Brady?
I believe not.
Oh, there's a drug in that movie which is sold in little capsules. It's called Nuke. And every time I see the little coffee capsules, it's just something about it reminds me of the Nuke drug that everybody is buying in tiny little capsules in RoboCop 2. Anyway, RoboCop 2, add it to your movie list. But yeah, so we have a whole, like all this coffee paraphernalia. And now I used to have like the routine was down very well, but then my wife introduced more equipment. And it's like, the coffee routine has to change. Like she introduces each piece very slowly because she knows I need to adapt over long periods of time.
Gosh, you weren't joking when you said you were going to start at the very beginning, were you?
I'll cut this down in editing, I swear. But
no, I'm sure people will be loving it. I'm sure all these coffee connoisseurs will be going, "No, stop more! Give us the bonus DVD edition. I want to know everything."
But yeah, so now lots of times when I make coffee, I find myself in the position that we have this like vacuum container for the beans, and then I put it through the burr grinder. I don't particularly like the burr grinder because it's really loud, and I feel like first thing, like it's 6 a.m, I'm trying to make a cup of coffee. I can't deal with the burr grinder that early, but apparently now I have to use it if we're making coffee. And then it goes through the drip coffee machine, and we have like pots of coffee. So we make actual real coffee. And when the hen story occurred last time, this is where people do get slightly horrified that we had I've gone through the process of making real coffee, and I had drank real coffee earlier in the day. And then I was coming to a pot of coffee that was sitting there that I needed to heat up because it had just been sitting there for a while.
So you could have just said I was reheating like nice coffee in the microwave. You probably didn't need the Luxor part of the story.
No, all of the story was absolutely necessary. All of the story was I'm going to...
Don't worry, I love the details.
Here's the thing. We'll cut out all this.
No, don't you dare. Don't you dare. I want people to know how hard you went on that story. I don't want people thinking you just glossed over it like Mr. Cool. I want people to know that you agonized over this and told your life story leading up to the moment you reheated some coffee.
I also feel that the length of that story was proportional to the number of emails I received from horrified people worried that I had made instant coffee. And
I didn't think you had made instant coffee, but I still think microwaving it just doesn't seem right to me. It seems, I don't know, it still seems wrong.
There's another point to this, which is that for me, coffee is a very important part of my workflow and the routine of working and just kind of getting stuff done. And precisely because of that, slightly working against my wife a little bit, I have resisted becoming a very fussy coffee person. I don't want to get too fussy about the coffees because I feel I also need to be able to drink coffee anywhere in the world. And so I have a threshold, which is basically Starbucks filter coffee. I need to be able to drink that. And I can't get fussy to the point where I become one of these people who won't drink Starbucks filter coffee. If I reach that stage, then I'm really in trouble. So I intentionally kind of don't get super into coffee, even though people might think I would be the kind of person who would be.
Well, I'm surprised you need coffee at all because you, like, everything I know about you, you're all about kind of, redundancies and safety and mechanisms and things and making sure everything is safe and works. And making yourself dependent on a drug seems to go against the CGP Grey I know, who would never want himself to be dependent on anything. You're all about what you're like. You don't want to be too dependent on one platform or one thing and this and one thing of that. And here you are just making yourself a slave to this drink that you can't work without.
Yes, this is true. I agree that is the in theory me, but everybody has vices. This is my vice. This is my somewhat addictive behavior, is the coffee. But I totally acknowledge that in a perfect world, I wouldn't be drinking coffee, but I just really like it. And I just think it also makes the whole work routine just kind of nicer, in a way that's hard to quantify, even if I will admit, totally addicted to coffee. And a morning where something goes wrong with the coffee production is really bad. I mean, luckily, by the time that coffee story occurred from last time, I had already ingested, 1 cup of coffee. So things were great. But it would have really been a disastrous day if that was supposed to be my first cup of coffee. And then I had to go to the hospital without I probably would have stopped at Starbucks on my way. I'm pretty sure I would have done that. I would have stopped at Starbucks on the way and be like, okay, listen, I need a filter coffee to go. And now I'm going to sit in the A&E and hold the Starbucks in one hand as I tell the doctor that I burned my other hand with coffee. That's what I would have done. That's how that would have worked.
When you told the doctor what happened, this sort of superheating thing, what did they say, by the way? Did they say, oh, yeah, it happens all the time, or, oh, you poor thing, or you idiot, you should have been more careful?
No, the dude just seemed totally nonplussed, like this happens all the time.
Yeah, but it does, yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it is with doctors. Like I said, we've been there a couple times before with relatively serious stuff, and they're always like, oh, yeah, we see 20 of these a day. But it's like, oh, this is a horrifying moment in our lives. It's a terrifying trip. It's like, whatever, You're my third, and it's not yet lunch. That's what it's like for doctors. But yeah, so anyway, coffee, you need to be able to drink it anywhere in the world. I don't want to get too fussy about it. But unfortunately, I do recognize how good coffee can be, which is something I kind of tried to avoid for a while. But so now I can be like, oh yeah, that's, Jamaican Blue or Kona coffee. Like I can definitely taste the difference, especially now that I don't drink coffee with sugar in it or anything. So I can really notice it. And I think, this is getting a little too close to being a coffee snob.
Yeah, you got to stay off the good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. We're cracking through the follow-up here.
Are we? No, we're not. We're not at all.
Not. This is not.
Oh, God.
If one of those planes crashes and I don't come out the other side,
right?
Will you still put this podcast up?
Yeah.
You will?
Well, I mean, now that you've said this,
I'm not sure I want you to.
Do you want me to not put this up in case you die?
We should talk about this at some point. What's our policy on the podcast if one of us dies?
What do you mean? What do you mean? What are we discussing here?
Well, look, like we're recording this, say.
Right.
What if one of us dies, before... Because we're recording this one quite far in advance.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. The listeners aren't aware, but we are recording this, 2 days after we put up the other one?
Yeah.
Precisely because you're going to be flying.
Yes. Yeah.
All over the world.
So we need to have an agreement in place. If one of us dies, what happens with the podcast? Like the last one recorded.
Yeah, it's really easy because if I die, well, I have all the files.
No, now that I've got Audio Hijack, I could put out our last recording, and because you've got such a cult following, that could actually be worth something, couldn't it? Gray's tragic last recording.
Do I have a cult following? That doesn't.
I could sell it. I could make money out of it.
Okay, look, if you sell it, you have to give my share of the proceeds to my wife if I have died.
Okay.
And if my wife and I have died on a plane together, then my family.
Okay, I think that's pushing it a bit. I think if you've both gone, I can probably keep the proceeds. I don't know about your family. I don't know. I guess it depends how much I make from it.
Okay.
I guess I do like the sound of your parents because they like me, so I'll give them your half.
Right. But yeah, I guess it never really occurred to me. But if you die between when we put up or between when the podcast is supposed to go up, you don't want me to put it up? Is that what you're telling me? Is that what you're saying? You don't want your final words?
Especially now that we're discussing it. Now that we're discussing,
it seems the very fact that we're discussing it is the reason that it should go up. Like, how creepy will this be? People will be so creeped out.
Well, and you think that's not a good thing, you realize?
Yeah, well, I will again remind you that at some point, well, probably both of us will be dead, and people in the future might be listening, which is always creepy to think about.
I don't like thinking about that.
Yeah?
Let's not talk about that.
About the fact that you're going to die at some point?
Yeah.
Or that people will be listening to you. Well, this moment right now, we're alive as we're recording it, won't be someday. Someone might be listening. Creepy future people. Anyway, I'm going to put it up if you die on the plane. That's fine. It's all good. Like, we've already sold the advertising space.
Well, how about we do a shout out? If you're listening to the podcast and you're not going on a plane today, send us a tweet.
You want
just to say, hey, I'm a listener and I'm not flying on a plane today.
Oh, okay. Make sure to send these tweets to Brady. Like, let's be really clear.
CGP Grey.
At Brady Harron.
CGP Grey.
At Brady Harron is.
They're going to at you.
He's the one who suggested this excellent idea.
If you at it to CGP Grey, he will retweet you.
This is the policy of the show: is all feedback goes to Brady. Tweet Brady and email Brady.
I'm saying all this stuff, all of a sudden realizing you're just going to mute me for that part, and you're going to wield your editing power here. I tell you what, if you ever happen to have any money in your wallet or your bank account and you want to turn that into not being money, go to Dubai.
Oh yeah.
That place is expensive.
Right, but you get services and goods for your money. They're not just, they're not just turning it into an empty wallet.
Well, you get, you do get glasses of water for $10 or something. Yeah, It's crazy. Mm-hmm. Crazy town. But it was, I had a really good time. I really enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And the best thing about it is definitely the buildings.
Yeah.
really impressive buildings. You know that one, what's it called? Is it called? The Burj Arab is the one in the sea that looks like a sail. And where I stayed was right next to that. Mm-hmm. And that was far more impressive in real life than in the pictures.
I saw you tweet a picture of that sail-looking hotel and your mojito, and it seemed like you were having a good time.
Yes. The one you go to see now is the Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world. Mm-hmm. And that is amazing.
Oh, yes.
That is the first time I've seen a building and it didn't look like it was real. Partly because the sky is so blue as well. Things never look as real when you get such a perfect sky. Mm-hmm. But I swear it looks like it's from a Star Wars movie. It looks like it should be on, is it Coruscant? How do you say the
Coruscant?
Planet? Coruscant, yeah. It looked like Coruscant. It should be on Coruscant. It looked unreal. It looked so tall you didn't believe it was real, and because it's made of glass, and it was so impressive.
So did you go up to the top on the observation deck or whatever they have up there?
I did. I went as high as you can go. You can't go to the top. It was interesting, actually. I kind of mucked up a bit, but we went there were 4 of us, and we hadn't booked ahead. And it turns out if you book ahead and book a certain time, you can get quite an affordable ticket. Mm-hmm. But we didn't know that, and I turned up, and the communication wasn't very good. And we said, "Oh, we want to go up the building," and she said, "Oh, no problem. You want to go to the top?" And I think she was just saying, I just thought she was saying, "Do you want to go to the top?" But I think to the top is like an experience or something you pay for to go higher. Mm-hmm. And we were like, "Yeah, we want to go to the top." And then she told us the amount of money, and I kind of handed my card over and paid it. And then when we looked at how much we just paid, it was a lot of money. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of money.
You don't want to give me a ballpark here?
The thing stopping me is the fact I don't know. But it was like,
you mean like you don't have a word for that number? That number's
right. Yeah,
so many zeros.
I have to use arrow notation. No, it was it was like I think it was in the hundreds of dollars. Like it was a few $100s it came to. It was crazy money. Mm-hmm. And it was like you went off into a special room and they gave you a cup of tea and you went up in a lift and, you were a bit more away from the masses, but you were still in a huge group of people of like 60 people. So it wasn't like it was a personal trip to the top in a velvet elevator.
Right.
But this experience meant you did go to the higher observation deck. I think it's like 20 or 40 floors above the layman's observation deck. And like any building that tall, there is no building that tall, but like really tall buildings, when you get that high, it kind of means nothing anymore. You may as well be in a plane looking down at the city. Mm-hmm. So in that respect, that wasn't the best part of it. The best part of that building is completely free, and that is just seeing it from all the different angles and, seeing it from far away and seeing it from close up. It is an extraordinary thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Tall buildings, I love them. Where do you stand on the issue of tall buildings?
Oh, they're dreadful. They're awful. I can't stand tall buildings.
You don't know?
Of course they're awesome.
Yeah.
They're yet another example of like man's domination over nature. Right? Like, oh, look at this. There was some sand and some rocks and some ore in the ground, and we built a mighty tower out of it. Like, it's just awesome. Like, I'm all for super tall towers. People are like, oh, it's such a waste. People are just trying to build the tallest skyscraper. It's like, I'm sorry. Did you not hear the words, the tallest skyscraper? Right? Like, whoever wants to build a taller skyscraper, you go for it, country. Just, of course, it's awesome. I've never been to Dubai. I love the Shard in London. And I love a similar kind of thing where you can see it from so many locations. And every time I can see it, it makes me happy. I look at that.
Gray. Mickey Mouse.
I know. It's so tiny
Mickey
compared.
Mouse.
I know. I'm not saying it's some huge skyscraper, but it's the biggest building here. Well, it's the biggest building in the European Union. But tall buildings are awesome. They're just great.
What's wrong with Europe? Why won't they get their act together and build a proper skyscraper? They're falling behind.
Actually, okay, I want to see a comparison.
If the Shard is the tallest in Europe, that's disappointing.
The Shard is a half a kilometer shorter than the Burj Khalifa. Hmm. I'm finding the Burj Khalifa is about 850 meters tall.
Yeah.
And the Shard is 306 meters tall.
Not even half.
Yeah.
Not even nearly half. Well, maybe nearly. No, not nearly half, really.
Okay, now I need for comparison. I know it's taller, but I don't know how much taller. What's the Empire State Building? Empire State Building. What is your height? Oh, no, website. I don't. Oh, God. The Empire State Building has an auto-playing YouTube video on it. It's so classless.
Why aren't you just on the Wikipedia list of buildings? Wikipedia has great resources on buildings.
Yeah, I know. You know why? I was trying DuckDuckGo. This is the first link. DuckDuckGo, I'm not super impressed.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
DuckDuckGo is it's an alternate search engine that I'm trying out, but I want to like them, but their search results are inferior.
Go for that. That Google one's good. Give that one a go.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. This is what I've been doing for the past week is I set my default search engine to DuckDuckGo and I search for something and it's like, oh, why are these results so crappy? Oh, right. Now I type in Google and search and they're like, oh, okay, I've just added an additional step to my life here. So the tip of the Empire State Building is, it's not that much taller. It's 440 meters is the Empire State Building.
So Burj Khalifa, 2 Empire State Buildings.
There's 2 Empire State Buildings.
Awesome. They're building a kilometer high one now in Saudi Arabia, I think.
Oh, really? Do you have any idea what it's called?
No, but it's on. You can read all about. I spent ages reading about it the other day. I think it's in Jeddah, maybe. I mean, it's 10 years away, but they have started it. It's a way off being built.
World's tallest building coming to Saudi Arabia. I follow Skyscraper News on Twitter. I haven't seen this. I'm disappointed.
Skyscraper News?
Yeah, there's a Skyscraper News account on Twitter. They just sometimes they just post awesome pictures of skyscrapers, but they often have they often have news about what's going on in the world of skyscrapers. So I follow it, and that's the kind of news that I want. We're building more massive structures, right? More more monuments to man's domination over nature. Thumbs up. Let's do that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at all these pictures. Good old Empire State Building. I really like that building.
It is good. It's a good building.
It is good.
Any other tall ones? Have you been up the CN Tower? That's a good one. I saw that get hit by lightning when I was there, but I realised that's really common. Like I saw, oh well, I just saw it get hit by lightning. But I think every man and his dog has a photo of it being hit by lightning. It's so common. I think it's rarer to go to Toronto and not see it get hit by lightning.
Yeah, that's probably the case.
It does have that. That has the best glass floor I've been on though, where you like step on the glass floor and your brain like just won't let you do it.
Yeah, that would be difficult to do.
Yeah,
I guess the Empire State Building is the tallest building I've ever been in. I can't think of anything else that's been taller off the top of my head.
Have you been up the Sears Tower? I forget what it's called now. The one in Chicago.
No, I've never been up the one in Chicago, which is it's supposed to be called the Willis Tower now. I believe is the actual name of it, but it'll always be the Sears Tower.
Yeah.
Sorry, whoever you are, Willis. It's not going to happen. Stop trying to make Willis happen. It's never going to happen.
Growing up in Adelaide, which has not got tall buildings, when I was growing up, there was the tallest building in Adelaide, which has since been surpassed. But when I was growing up, the tallest building in Adelaide was this, I think it's called the Grenfell Tower. It's just this black building, which is probably, I'm guessing, 15 to 16 stories high, like something ridiculous.
Massive.
Yeah, but on the Adelaide skyline, it was this dominant thing. And when you're little, like when I was a little kid, I would never go into the centre of Adelaide, like the CBD. I lived in the suburbs, but you would see it like when you were driving towards the city or driving around. And to me, it was this mythical building, and it had this nickname, the Black Stump, because it just looked like a big black stump, funnily enough. And it was like always my dream to like be near it or go inside it. Like it was this amazing, amazing thing. And then like years later, when I grew up and worked in Adelaide, I actually worked like 3 buildings across from it. And it was nothing. I would go into it every day, and it was this really, and by that time, it's funny, like the mythology of it was gone, and like it was not special to me in any way. And yet whenever I switch into like childhood memory mode, it becomes really magical again. Like it does that make sense? Like it's this weird thing. Like the child me is still impressed by it, right? And yet the adult me is not.
The adult you finds it entirely unimpressive.
Yeah,
but the child inside you still loves it.
Great. I'm looking it up. I want to look at it.
The Black Stump. Is that what I should search for?
Put Adelaide and Black Stump and see what comes up.
Adelaide Black Stump. I get a Facebook band called Black Stump.
Grenfell Centre was the first result I got. I'm going to search images.
Now I've got to go to Google. Sorry, DuckDuckGo. Adelaide Black.
It's not coming up. Maybe it was just what my mum called it.
Yeah, I'm seeing Grenfell Centre.
Oh my goodness! It is even smaller than I. I'm not sure I can find it.
Okay, so I'm on the maps. I'm gonna go to Adelaide.
Oh my goodness! I found it. Hang on, I want to send you this particular image. Are you ready? Are you ready for the building that, as a boy, blew me away? Are you ready? I'm going to send it to you here on iMessage. Here it is. This was my fantasy building as a boy.
That is like every boring office building in London.
I know. It couldn't be like.
Just they couldn't. Okay, so it is darker in color than the buildings that surround it, but otherwise you could not imagine a less remarkable building.
Oh, for me, it was so imposing. It was like this. It was like the Darth Vader of the skyline. It was the tallest building, and yeah.
So I'm looking at Adelaide. Oh, it's not. Oh, Apple doesn't have Adelaide in 3D. Sorry, Adelaide. I guess you're not important enough for Apple to fly planes over you, so I could get a sense of this building. Oh well. Anyway, the picture is hilarious.
The black stump.
Yeah, that's not super impressive.
Burj Khalifa, very impressive.
Is it? It must be apartments at the top, right? It can't possibly be office space.
No, up that high, I don't even think it's apartments. I think it's like business suites and things like that. It's got a real mixed use. It's got a hotel in it. It's got an Armani hotel in it. It's got accommodation. It's got a bit of everything, and it's very businessy up that high. And a lot of the stuff above the observation decks are also like functional, like maintenance and things to do with the running of the building.
Right. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but if I had infinite money, I would buy an apartment at the top of the Shard. I absolutely love that building and would want to live in their gigantic apartments that are up there. So if I had infinite money, that's what I would do. I should put that as a Patreon goal. If I can end up getting $1 billion per video, I will buy myself a nice apartment in the Shard.
Do it. That would be cool. Then maybe you'd finally let me see your apartment as well.
Yeah, I'd invite you over. If I had an apartment in the Shard, I would invite you over. I would invite everybody over.
You'd still be like, no, I'm still working on it and getting it right, and I don't, it's not ready for visitors. My billion pound apartment in the Shard.
Yeah, I would love to know how much those things actually are. I downloaded all the floor plans and details about them when the Shard was first going up, and I'm glad I did because they took down all that information once they sold them for $1 bazillion. But I occasionally look at it because like, oh, those apartments are just so cool.
Well, that will also be handy for that heist we're planning.
Yes, yeah, the other heist. To steal the apartment in the Shard, I guess?
No, to steal the diamond that's kept in there.
Oh,
and
right.
And the secret map.
Right. Oh, yeah, you and your secret maps.
The secret map that reveals the location of the diamond. I wanted to tell you a few stories. Mm-hmm. Like, they're pretty humble braggy.
Yeah.
But they're also...
What forum could be better than this?
Yeah. But they're also just interesting social situations that happens as a result of making YouTube videos. Mm-hmm. And I want to see how you would have reacted or what suggestion you have in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the first two are to do with being recognized. Now, I don't get recognized a whole lot, partly because, my videos aren't that popular. They're not that big a deal. And also, I'm not in very many of them.
Right.
So, I don't think I have a particularly recognizable face, but I'm in enough of them and I do enough for people to occasionally recognize me. And that was especially likely if I'm somewhere where there's a very high concentration of nerdy people.
Yeah. Can I don't mean to interrupt you here, but
yeah.
For a while, my dad was watching the Numberphile videos and he thought that you were James Grime and he was very confused for a little while.
A few people think that because James was in so many of the early Numberphile videos, especially. They think he is Numberphile. Yeah. And I guess they know that Gray's doing a podcast with the guy that makes Numberphile. So they think, yeah.
And so my dad made some comment to me about how he goes, oh, Brady's voice. And and the way he looks just don't match up at all. And it took me a long time to figure out that he wasn't talking about you. He was talking about James.
Okay.
But anyway, sorry.
I wonder if James has people coming up to him saying, "Are you Brady Haran?" I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't happen to me very much, but it does occasionally happen if I'm somewhere where there's a lot of nerdy people. So it is slightly more likely to happen when I'm lurking around math department buildings and economics buildings at a place like Berkeley.
Yeah, it would seem like Berkeley might be an epicenter for nerds. Like your nerd flux density is quite high.
Yeah. So it doesn't happen. It still doesn't happen very often, but it's happened a couple of times on this trip. And the first one is, and I found people do this more often than you think. They come up to you and they say, "You're Brady Haran."
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to that?
Are you asking for advice from
Yeah.
I am the worst person to ask this advice of.
If someone came up to you and said, "You're CGP Grey," what am I supposed to say to that? Like, it's not, "Are you?" Because that would be fair enough. Because, I think maybe you look a bit like that. But just telling me who I am. They've said like a weird thing. And now they've put me into a situation where I have no other option but to say a weird thing back, which is usually, yes, I am. And that's quite often the end of the conversation. And
so then the two of you just walk away at that point? Is that what happens?
Yeah, well, then they just stand there and suddenly they've put the onus on me to do something. And then I usually say something like, "Who are you?" or "What's your name?" And I start asking them questions about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And like suddenly there's a complete and utter stranger who I'm like asking all about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that anyway, I don't think that's a good conversation starter to walk up to someone and just tell them what their name is.
Right. That doesn't, I would not receive that well.
Yeah. So I don't mind. I love, it's rare enough that I actually like people coming up to me and saying, it's a nice little ego boost, and it's nice to meet someone who, watches the videos because they're really important to me. But just that's a weird thing. That's a weird thing to say. And it's not a criticism of the people who say it. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what I would say, but
I was going to say, do you have a recommended approach?
I think asking if I'm Brady is a good thing to ask, because you can never be sure. It's not like it's Tom Cruise. If you went up and said, "Are you Tom Cruise?" that would probably be quite weird. But I think asking, "Oh, are you Brady?" or anyway.
But that doesn't seem like it's much better, because then you say, "Yes, I am," which is the same response that you mentioned before, and then but then I feel like the onus is back on them. Like conversationally, I think the onus then goes back onto them, because now they've had their information confirmed. It's time for them to. I see. This is like ping pong. They served, you hit back, and now
it's time for them to hit.
Court.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know. It just feels that way. Anyway, this is a minor quibble. I had a more interesting one happen to me a couple of days after. Mm-hmm. There's a little shuttle bus that runs from the center of Berkeley University campus into town. It's probably a 5-minute drive. I got on this bus, and this guy, he looks at me quizzically, and you can tell, obviously he thinks he recognizes me.
Right.
And obviously most likely from the videos, because we don't know each other personally. But he gives you that look when you look at someone like, I know that person. Mm-hmm. And he kind of squints and turns his head a bit sideways. And I'm thinking, okay, he's either now just going to ignore me, or he's going to come up and say, "You're Brady Haran." Anyway, I sit, and I have nowhere to sit other than basically next to him, bar one seat with an empty seat between us. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, what's going to happen here? And he looks over at me again, and then he turns to his girlfriend and starts whispering and saying something.
This is all super subtle,
Well, yeah, not particularly subtle, but then he pulls out his phone and starts calling up my videos and Googling me and looking for pictures of me and stuff like that.
So you're watching this guy Google you in front of you?
Yeah, and it's really, really awkward, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So now I can't look at him, because if I look at him, I'm really curious. I want to see what videos he's looking at and what pictures he's found. because I'm just curious. But I can't look, because if he then looks at me and catches me looking at him, looking at me,
right. And now this is really awkward. It was just slightly awkward before.
That's super weird. Yeah. So I'm kind of now just kind of looking away, but because I'm a bit curious, I'm trying to have sneaky glances at his phone to see what he's looking at. Mm-hmm. And then he's having sneaky glances back at me to see if like I am like, you know, the guy.
Right. He's holding up a picture of you to your face.
No, but he's trying to be subtle about it as well, but I've clocked what's going on. And
yeah,
so
you're a super spy here following what's happening.
It's so weird. And then like, but I don't know what to do. Part of me thinks, you know, because I can't then turn to him and say, yes, it's me. But also because then what if I did that and that's not what he was looking at? Or he was just checking and he's like, oh, that is Brady Haran. I hate that guy. Like he's such a tosser. I can't believe Gray does a podcast with him.
Right.
So I don't know what to do. And then the bus trip comes to an end and I get off the bus and I don't know whether I should sort of run away quickly or I should go slowly to give him a chance to say hello. Because I'd be, you know, I love people saying hello, like I said, but then he just put his phone back in his pocket and he like watched me get off but never did anything. So if you're that guy that was on the bus, say hello next time. Say hello. I don't mind. I once got on a plane with my wife, and I like the window seat. So
you like
and my
the
wife
window seat.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So, and my wife usually lets me have it. So I had the window seat, and then she had the one next to me, and then the guy that on the aisle.
Oh well, yeah, okay. The window seat is better if it's between the window seat and the middle seat. Obviously, the window seat is better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that was the comparison here.
Okay. Yeah. So I had a window seat. She had the middle one, and then there was a third one. And the guy that sat in the aisle, like just as the plane was starting to take off, leaned over and said, "Are you Brady Haran? I really love all your videos."
Oh God.
And like, luckily it was only like a 2-hour flight or something, but he spent the whole flight talking to me.
Oh God.
Over her. Oh. And I think we didn't swap seats for some reason. I don't know why. But in the end,
your wife must have loved that.
I think I offered to know. I think what happened, I think she pretended to be asleep. So yeah. Anyway, and I've got one other awkward thing that can happen as a result of doing the job that we do. And I want to get your advice. Oh, I didn't get your advice on what I should have done on the bus. It sounds like you have none. It was just a weird thing.
Yeah, that would just be really weird. The plane
what would you
scenario.
Do if the person, What would you do if the person sitting next to you on a bus was Googling what does CGP Grey look like and looking for pictures of you and things like that and started watching your videos? And
I would almost certainly just get off the bus no matter where the stop was. That's what I would do.
Right.
I think, how can I avoid this situation as fast as possible? I know that you are Mr. Oh, hey, you know, you're a very friendly guy and you want people to come up and say hello to you. And I am not that person. It's not that I don't appreciate having an audience of people who might know me, but it's just that I am not, if I'm out and about in the world, I am rarely receptive to strangers coming up and saying hello to me. And it is super weird if people know who you are and you don't know who they are. Like I would not.
Presumably you never get that other than at something that it is known you're going to be at. Like if it's not an event that it's known CGP Grey is there, like Random Acts or some YouTube environment, presumably you don't get that in the street.
Yeah. So I am fortunate enough that I have never had someone just randomly come up to me and be like, "Oh my God, you're CGP Grey." That has not occurred. However, since we have started the podcast in particular, there have been a few scenarios where I am pretty sure that someone is trying to place my voice where just like you said, you can see when someone's looking at you and they're trying to figure out, oh, I know this person.
Yeah.
I have occasionally, like, you know, been getting a coffee or at a restaurant or something, and you can tell like someone is listening to you and trying to place it, but no one has yet been able to place it, which is feeling like, oh, thank God. Or if they have been able to place it, they just pretend that they haven't, which is like, oh, what a relief. Either way, it's good news. So yeah, I don't know. I've mentioned before, like I have to like spin up a certain part of my brain for this podcast. And I feel like I'm just not ready to meet strangers walking around or just living my normal life. So that's why I'm the worst person to ask for advice.
I had one other minor problem, and another of these first worlder YouTuber problems, and this is one that's a bit more.
Tell me more about how famous you are, Brady.
I cannot emphasize how rare this is. Okay, it's not, but anyway, it's funny. Just happened yesterday, so it's on my mind. But this last thing is a bit more your sphere. I use the Twitter app on my phone, for which you can judge me and condemn me and whatever, but it's just the way life has turned out. Mm-hmm. And there are certain things about the Twitter app that I don't like that much about the design. And one is that it's very easy to follow someone without meaning to. Mm-hmm. And I followed someone who was just a viewer, or someone who had probably had atted me or made some comment and was in a list of people I was looking at, and I had accidentally followed this person.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I pressed that little plus person sign or whatever.
Yeah. And it is too easy when looking at someone's profile to accidentally hit the follow button.
You don't even have to be looking at their profile. You just could be looking at their tweet and start following them, I think.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that on the app then, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. It is.
Anyway, maybe I was.
I've done that same thing where it's too easy to accidentally click on the follow, and you're like, "Oh no, I just wanted to see who this person was."
Yeah,
right.
Whatever happened, I started following this person and didn't realize, and then they tweeted something a while later, basically along the lines of, "Oh my God, I can't believe Numberphile's following me. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me." And they were really, really deeply happy. Mm-hmm. And they made this happiness very, very public, and they really carried on about it. Mm-hmm. What do I now do?
Well, you unfollow them.
You can't. That's almost like someone coming up and saying it's nice to meet you and then punching them in the face. You can't unfollow someone immediately after they've said that.
Okay, then you mute them forever.
Mute them forever is your advice.
Well, my actual advice is you unfollow them, because that's right. But you didn't want my actual advice. And so I'm now ratcheting it down and trying to find something that you might do. And so I would suggest you mute them forever.
So if you accidentally followed some schoolgirl that loves CGP Grey videos and she wrote, "Oh my God, I'm so happy CGP Grey followed me. He's my biggest educational hero and he chose to follow me and this has made me really happy. And my puppy dog died yesterday, but everything's okay now because CGP Grey followed me." You would then go, "Oh, I didn't realize I'd done that. Blip, unfollow."
I like this scenario. This is really good. Her puppy dog died, huh?
Yeah.
That's
and you've taken away the pain by following her.
All right.
Accidentally.
I might give that a week and then I'd unfollow her.
All right.
I know for a fact that I have done that. And at least once someone has commented to me. They said something like, "Oh, that's really weird. CGP Grey followed me for 3 minutes." So I know that has happened, but not with like, "Oh, my puppy dog just died. And all of my problems are now gone because of this thing." But, like, "Oh, I'm not going to have this person on my Twitter timeline forever. That's for sure." And even if you mute them, it's like, "Oh, but they're still on my list of followers." I go through and I try to prune the people I follow quite regularly. And so I'd have to always pass over, like, "Oh, right, here's the guilt trip that I'm going to just live with for the rest of the time that I have a Twitter account." No. Eventually they're going to get unfollowed. That's the way that works.
I did read something about that crash today, actually, that made me wonder what you would think. And that was, I was reading about some relatives who still believe, and of course we can understand why they would believe this, that maybe the plane was hijacked and taken to an island and everyone's still alive and they're being held ransom or something. And I know that's really implausible.
It was the worst ransom ever if nobody knows about it.
Yeah, of course.
Terribly organized.
You can see how someone clings to hope, though. If a loved one of yours was on the plane that went missing, I mean, how you're this uber rational guy? Are you someone who would be capable of clinging to that kind of hope, or would you be the super rational guy that's like, "It's all over, I'm moving on"?
I mean, here's the thing. I would hope that I would be capable of being rational, but this is exactly the kind of situation that it is very difficult to be rational under. So, yeah, I can easily imagine that I would irrationally cling to an incredible long shot, because that's a very human thing to do. Like, that's just what people do under those circumstances. So, it's like hypothetical situations. It's super easy to give the correct answer when you're sitting comfortably in a chair somewhere, but that ignores how people actually react under difficult circumstances. And yeah, losing a loved one in an ambiguous way definitely counts as a very difficult circumstance that you can't expect people to react rationally to all the time.
Last plane crash, and I'm really just raising this one to see if you heard about it. You know,
I heard about this. Yeah, I know about this one. This is the Harrison Ford one. I heard about this. This was impossible to miss on Twitter.
How did Twitter? Oh, because you've been on Twitter a lot lately, so
certainly have. Yep, yeah. I saw a bunch of people even tweeting me about this one, but you have to mention the Harrison Ford.
Did you then go and look it up? Like, have you looked it up and read about it or anything?
I know literally nothing about it. I just saw people tweeting me about it. Is there anything interesting to know? I guess Harrison Ford was in a plane crash, but he's fine.
This is amazing to me, though, that this happened. Someone has said to you, Harrison Ford, who I know you like. Right. You love Star Wars. You like Indiana Jones. Mm-hmm. I'm imagining you like Blade Runner. This is an actor of some import to you. This is someone who is a figure in your life. Whether you have to admit that. This is someone who's part of your childhood and your upbringing.
I have definitely seen his movies. Yes.
Yeah. So he's an interesting. As far as celebrities go, he's as close to an interesting celebrity as there could be for you, I would imagine.
No, I wouldn't say that at all. No? Who would be I think if Elon Musk was in a plane crash.
No, that doesn't count. Why
doesn't different. That count? Why doesn't that
I'm
count
talking about frivolous celebrities, not people who are actually doing stuff.
Okay.
Okay, all of
like
that aside.
Actor?
All of that aside, you're telling me that you became aware that a famous person who plays Han Solo had a plane crash, was in a plane crash, and you didn't think, I might look that up, and go to Google or Duck Bang or whatever that thing is you were talking about.
Duck Llama.
You didn't go and have a look, just like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I wouldn't mind reading a couple of sentences on that. You just saw that and thought, back to whatever.
Whenever I saw it on Twitter, I saw enough things in a short enough period of time where the relevant information was conveyed to me. Harrison Ford was in a plane crash, and he's fine. He was stable at a hospital or something.
Well, saying you don't know anything about it, tell me what your imagination is. What are you imagining happened? Tell me what you think. Like you've just said to me, okay, Brady, tell me what happened. Like you're humoring me. What do you think I'm about to say happened?
Well, I'm imagining, because now I may have this celebrity wrong, but I thought Harrison Ford was well known already for having a pilot's license, and that he was he volunteered in some rescue scenario a few years ago. Because I vaguely remember this on the internet. People saying how weird would it be to be rescued, and it turns out it's Harrison Ford flying the plane. So I'm just imagining it's some very small private aircraft that he was flying for pleasure that had some kind of mechanical problem. That's my guess. Is that far off?
No, that's pretty much on the money.
Well, there we go. Okay, so
it was like a World War II sort of replica plane. The only interesting thing is he had some problem, and he kind of half crash landed, half safe landed on a golf course, on the fairway of a golf course, and then people playing golf all rushed and rescued him. So there's some pretty cool footage and photos. But no, you're pretty much on the money.
Well, there we go.
Who needs the news when Gray just knows it naturally?
Of all of the celebrities who could possibly be in a plane crash, this is the only one who I have some dim knowledge of. Oh, they fly planes.
John Travolta flies proper commercial jets.
What, just in his spare time?
Yeah, I think he's got a big, I don't know if it's a Boeing, but he's got a huge, he can fly airliners. He was an ambassador for Qantas for a while.
Oh, yeah? I was just looking this up here. Yes, that's right. Harrison Ford was involved in the rescue of a lost hiker in Wyoming at some point.
He's got a helicopter license too. So was that a helicopter jobby or a?
No, it's a Bell 407. Oh no, wait, that is his helicopter.
That is a helicopter. Hey, I think he's had 3 crashes now, or 3 emergencies of note.
Well, someone should be counting up all those points on his license and take away his flying ability at some point.
Yeah. Oh, well done. I'm really pleased with you there. I think I'm impressed. Well done, Gray.
There's nothing to be impressed by here.
I'm still a bit proud of you.
This doesn't make any sense.
So anyway, so I was really curious about where you stand on the idea of human exploration of Mars. Are we clinging to the old-fashioned days of Apollo? And does it make more sense to send super advanced robots and artificial intelligence? Or does even Gray think there's merit to sending humans? Your thoughts, please.
Oh yeah. You just want me to open up on this one?
You can start.
Okay. So I think there are two separate questions here. And the first one is just a question of, we are trying to learn stuff about the solar system and the history of this planet, like basically a scientific inquiry question.
Sort of data gathering.
Right. Like we want to know stuff about Mars. We want to know stuff about the solar system. And like, no doubt about it, hands down, if you want to get the most amount of scientific data per dollar spent, it seems like robots are obviously the way to go. Right. You can get robots to Mars much more cheaply than you could possibly get humans to Mars. So in terms of an efficiency question, it's like, yes, there should definitely be NASA and space exploration time and money spent on robotic exploration of the solar system. It just
I want to stop you. I want to stop you on that for a second, because I'm not 100% convinced it's a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
And the famous story about that, to borrow from Apollo, as you know I love to, is Apollo 15 famously came back with a particular rock they call it the Genesis rock, that one of the astronauts found on that mission. And that was considered a real game changer for the understanding of the origin of the moon. They think it might be like a piece of original crust, and we won't go into all the details, partly because I don't know all of them, but it's very famous. It's very famous. Mm-hmm. And Dave Scott, the astronaut, on Apollo 15, and the others involved always said, a robot wouldn't have been able to identify and see it for what it was, and there was like a real human aspect to the finding of it, whereas if you just went and did random samples and rakes and areas, and I know robots are getting cleverer, but so are humans, and I think there is still a component of I don't know, I still think sometimes doing science, even doing fieldwork science, there is a component of a little bit of outside the boxness and a little bit of not following the algorithm that can lead to real important discoveries and breakthroughs. And I do think having humans doing field work, whether it's on Mars or not, does have an advantage. And there's a really good argument to have about how big is that advantage compared with the incredible costs of getting the humans there.
Yes.
And I guess that's how you are about to reply.
Well,
but I do think you get better quality. You do get a lot better quality data from humans if they do their job well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because I also think that the Apollo program is a particularly interesting moment in the history of humans and also the history of technology. I sometimes kind of idly speculate about its role, but that's kind of a question for another time. But the only point that I want to make is that at the time that we did the Apollo program, well, actually humans were more cost effective if you wanted to get something on the moon, because we just did not have the robotic technology at the time to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, if you wanted to put a remote controlled robot on the moon that had the same kind of capabilities as our current Mars rovers do, it's like, well, I hope you have $1 trillion to do that. Like, it's just, it's just not possible. Like,
and a robot the size of a gymnasium.
Yeah, that's exactly. We're still using vacuum tubes, and all this other stuff. So humans were the cost effective option. And it turned out that the moon was an achievable goal with a cost effective option, compared to something like robotics. But of course, as time goes on, right, robotics gets cheaper and cheaper, and Mars is a much more difficult goal. And so, it's the cost effective question and calculation is very different between those two scenarios.
Yeah. I mean, clearly you're right as well, because that is what we're doing. We're sending all these robots to Mars all the time. And
the advantage, of course, with the robots is that they are expandable in a way that humans are not, where, like, I think that some of the really interesting programs are the deep space robots. Like, hey, we're going to land a robot on a comet, right? And it's going to take a sample from the surface of a comet. Like,
did you say expandable or expendable? Because that's both are valid. Actually,
yeah,
they're both important points. Yeah.
They are both important points. Like you can, we lost a robot. Like, well, I guess that costs some money, but the robot wasn't anybody's father. It's like that's they you can just write them off. And
but you did say expandable, did you? That's what you meant.
I think that's what I meant. That whatever we do for getting robots on Mars, well, we can apply that to getting robots in places where we just can't even dream of sending humans. Like we're never going to land a human on a comet that's swinging by in the solar system. Probably for a couple hundred years, we're not sending any humans to Neptune, right? That's just not going to happen. Yeah. But so the robots are able to go further. So you get more by investing in the robots in a way that you just don't with humans. Like Mars may be the only human reachable target for a very long time.
So it's like it's like franchisable. If we make a good probe that works on Mars, we can build the same one everywhere.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you do things you couldn't possibly, like, hey, we're going to send a probe. We're just going to take a very expensive robot and we're just going to throw it into the sun, right? And have it just record data on the way down. Like, you couldn't do that with a person. It'd be very tragic. And, it probably wouldn't be very good at recording data in the last moments, which is the most interesting time.
Yep. Okay, so from a science standpoint, you're saying robots all the way.
Yeah. However, I am also totally behind a manned program for Mars. Like, I think you can do both of these goals at the same time, in no small part because when you look at how much money is spent on NASA and space exploration just in general, it's not like it's some huge amount of money relative to governmental spending. It's a tiny amount of money. And I'm a big fan in like, hey, maybe we should have an offsite backup for the human species, right? This might be a good thing to do. This might be literally the most important project that humanity can possibly undertake, is having humans on more than one planet. So I think that is definitely a very important, but very long-term goal. But you don't reach long-term goals unless you are progressively working towards them a little bit every day. And so, yes, I think we should have in development an active program to land people on Mars. No doubt. I think that is important enough that if I was in charge of the government, I'd be willing to double NASA's budget on something like that. So, hey, take everything you're doing now, put it into robots, and also we're going to double your budget and let's send some humans to Mars. Like, let's just, however long it takes, let's just get started on this and make sure that this is a real project that's happening.
Just to pause for a second on Mars and come back to what you just said then. Why do you think that's so... I always think of you as a kind of rational, and when I'm dead, I'm gone, and all that sort of stuff. Why do you care so much about this kind of seeding of humanity and this insurance, off-site backup, as you called it? Like, I know you don't want everyone to die in a comet impact. We've discussed this before.
Right. Yeah, but unlike you, who would be moved by the beauty of the experience, right? That was your position, if I remember. You thought, oh, it's so
I like it. You're
tragic.
Twisting my words for a change. I'm enjoying that. But
I don't think that was twisting your words at all. That was exactly what you said.
So I understand, you don't wish ill upon your fellow humans, and you know you want. But why are you so invested in the future of humanity? If you're one of these guys who, when I've left my mortal coil, nothing matters, and why do you think we should be investing billions in that? And
well, because I'm thinking about it from a different perspective. When you're asking a question about a Mars program, well, me living in my individual life, there's nothing that I can really do to get us on Mars sooner.
Yeah.
But when you're asking the question about Mars exploration, I think implicitly in that question is thinking about it from the perspective of something like a government. Should a government undertake this kind of project, or should a crazy tech billionaire undertake this kind of project? Is this a worthwhile thing for people to do? And I would say, yes, I think that it is a worthwhile thing for people to do. That's why I'm thinking about it from like the King Gray perspective. Would I think that this has enough value over the long term to invest in? Yes. And that's a different question from just lots of other questions you ask me. I'm thinking about it just from like, oh, it's just me in my personal life. Should I follow the news or should I not follow the news? Like, that's a very different way of thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm big on this is let's get people elsewhere. I think that is a good goal to have.
Tell me what you think about these people who, there's been a bit of it in the news lately, but you'd be familiar with the concept anyway. These people who put themselves forward as people who would be willing to go to Mars with no return ticket. The people who are willing to be these sort of sacrificial lambs in a way. Do you understand those people? Do you think they're nutters? Could you be one of those people? Like, what do you think of those people?
Well, I mean, you know that I would never be one of those people. No, forget it.
The immortality of being the first wouldn't appeal to you?
Again, this is now asking me about my personal life, and I would definitely trade living 50 additional years on Earth of my own actual life versus cutting that down to a 2 or 3 year lifespan, but getting immortality in the textbooks. That immortality in the textbooks means nothing to me when I'm dead. So that's a very different question.
Yeah.
Would you do it? Would you go on a one-way trip to Mars?
Do you know, if you'd asked me 5 or 6 years ago, you would have got a shaky answer. I don't know, maybe yes, maybe no. Mm-hmm. But now, as I get older, it's more of a no.
Oh, it's more of a no. Interesting.
Yeah,
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Don't want to leave my wife. Don't want to leave my doggies.
So Audrey is your answer there, really.
And Lulu.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think maybe you just get a bit older and cynical. And while I still think Neil Armstrong's awesome, I do realise that he's just a guy who's dead himself now. And, while I'm envious of what he got to do and his legacy, he's just a guy. And what does it all mean? So, but I don't know if you said to me, Brady, will you go to Mars, and there's a 50-50 chance of coming back, it'd be a different story.
Yeah, it's a different story. And also it might be a different story as you continue to get older, when you're looking at the ever shortening event horizon of your life.
Yeah.
Then it's a different, like, oh, well, I'm 75. How much more time do I possibly have? I might as well do something really interesting, because then the calculus on this is different. I'm like, well, how many years am I giving up versus spending the last 2 years of that doing something interesting that nobody's ever done before?
Would you go? You wouldn't go with the risk either. Like if Elon Musk called you up and said, "Well, let's not say Elon Musk because you love him so much, you'd do anything."
I would not do anything. No, I would still. Again, it's just like, oh, some important person's asking you something. The importance of the person should not change your calculation on whether or not you do something. That's a terrible way to make decisions.
You just told me you'd consider coming to Mount Everest if the other guys come.
That's totally different.
Okay, well, let me put it to you this way: if there was a 50-50 chance of you dying going to Mars, right? On a special mission, they've made a ship. It's all good.
Except for the 50-50 chance.
Except for the 50-50 chance.
It's all good except for the death.
Yeah. Would you go?
No.
Would you go if Dirk, Henry, Destin, and all of us were going?
No, I would not.
Right.
That's a no-brainer. Like, well, guys, I'm gonna monopolize the educational market in just a few short months.
This is a strategy. Yeah, your views will go up.
Yeah, it's not only is there a downside, but there's actually an upside. It's like a hedge in the market here. I was like, well,
can I have your login details before you go?
Yeah, exactly. Just to preserve your legacy.
Yeah. So, I mean, what would it take to go to Mars? Like, just, it would have to be commonplace. Like, if it was like,
I kind of assume that I will never not be on planet Earth.
Whoa. It's not exactly a wild assumption, but yeah.
There's a question of thinking forward into the future. Is it possible that within our lifetime, travel to Mars becomes, if not exactly common, not uncommon? Yeah, I think in the course of our life, that's a possibility. And so that's why I say that question the way that I do is.
Do you mean this in the grey possibility sense of, well, of course anything's possible, or do you think like there's a likelihood, like, because I'm not convinced humans will go to Mars while I'm alive.
If I had to put money on the table, I would say I would bet that yes, within my lifespan, there are humans who step on Mars.
Really?
I would be surprised if that was not the case.
Wow. A year ago, I would have said no. Now I'm a bit more 50-50, but.
So that's why when I'm projecting forward, I can imagine a place where we could say something like travel to Mars is more frequent than travel to the International Space Station is today. right? Like, people go to the International Space Station, but very few. I can imagine a scenario where travel to Mars is more frequent than that. But that's why I'm also saying, like, I can also think like, well, I don't like flying on a jet airplane across the Atlantic. So I can't imagine there's ever going to be a scenario in which I would go to Mars, even if it was common-ish in the future. I don't know. What are you thinking over there? It sounds like you're mulling something over.
I don't know. I worry. I don't know. Sometimes I think you're too happy to watch what other people do and you don't want to do it enough yourself. But on the other hand, you do like doing stuff, and you've driven across America a couple of times and you are a guy who goes and does things and sees things. So I can never quite I can't figure that aspect of you out. You're interested in science and exploration and, you've got a fascination about nature and yet, I don't know. I guess you're just a bit of you're a bit nervous.
No, I'm not nervous. I think it might be better to say that I'm calculating with this stuff. If you could say that travel to Mars was as safe as air travel is today, then that's a different question. Then I say, okay, now I can imagine a scenario under which I travel to Mars. But I'm not imagining that within the scope of my probable life that travel to Mars will reach that kind of safety level. That's kind of how I'm thinking about this here. But again, it's also a different thing where, imagine again, I'm like an old person. Then the calculation is also different there. But right now, I'm in the prime of my life, Brady.
You are.
Going to Mars seems like a terrible idea.
Yeah. What do you think of it as a planet?
I hear it's pretty cold there. That's what I hear. It's very cold in Mars this time of year.
It's chilly.
And every time of year.
It's never been it's never been a planet that has excited me a lot. Like I'm really into I'm really into astronomy and space and I'm really into the solar system. And Mars is always this glamour planet, isn't it? It's like the cliched other planet that people love talking about and writing stories about and stuff. And I've always found it almost the least interesting of the other planets.
Well, it's the most similar to Earth. That's also the thing. That's why people talk about going, because it's the most similar, but that also kind of makes it the least interesting.
Yeah.
I did lessons on the solar system with the kids that I used to teach. This was just a regular part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
And I was always aware that the most interesting thing to talk about with Mars is the possibility of humans going. But other than that, there's not, like, you can't talk about like the amazing kind of weather or the interesting extremes on the planet because it's not that.
Basically, you've got Olympus Mons, haven't you? That's the thing.
Let me tell you, a room full of 15-year-old kids are not super impressed by Olympus Mons, right? Like you can do your best with that, but it is not. There's no way to make that capture the imagination.
The highest mount, 3 times higher than Mount Everest.
Again, you even the notion of Mount Everest to a room full of kids is like an abstract notion. And
really?
So, there's a thing that's really big and it's 3 times bigger than the thing that's really big. It doesn't connect in a way. But you can talk about, what might it be like to try to fly through Jupiter? And like, they can kind of imagine this idea of like, there's nothing really solid in this planet. It's like a lie, this planet. It's a gas giant. But with Mars, always the most interesting thing was just talking about people possibly going there. Like that would capture kids' attention. The particular physical features of Mars are not really interesting.
Yeah.
So that's why I think you also don't find it super interesting, because from a geological perspective, it is probably the least interesting of all the planets. Now we're going to hear from everybody who knows everything about Mars geology.
It's pretty. It's pretty dry.
Oh, I can't. I should be able to remember. I cannot remember her name. The geologist in the Red Mars book. I don't know. That. Have you not read Red Mars?
I have not. No.
There's a really grumpy geologist woman.
Oh, yes, I have. Is that the one where they have like a festival on Olympus Mons?
Yes.
Yes, I have read that.
Stanley Robinson.
Yeah, I have read that one.
Okay. John Boone.
I tell you what.
What?
The movie Mission to Mars with Gary Sinise and Tim Robbins and those people. Mm-hmm. Is my worst movie ever made. When people ever say, "What's the worst movie ever that you've ever watched?" I always say that one. And yeah, I've watched it 3 or 4 times. But I think that is my worst movie ever.
Oh, I know
anyone...
that. That is a terrible movie.
Yeah.
I do know that. Actually, I don't know any other time to bring this up. I'll mention this. Here's a horrifying thing about teaching kids and realizing, like, what do people know about the world? And the answer is way less than you think.
Yeah.
Whenever I would do the thing about the solar system.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I would teach many classes, like a whole bunch of kids. So let's say out of maybe 150 kids that I would teach in a particular year, when I would get to the part about Mars and humans maybe one day visiting Mars, without fail, there was always at least one kid every year who was confused because they assumed that humans had already been to Mars. Right? Not in like a pulling my leg kind of way, but because this always happened, right? Like every year, I just knew after a while this question was going to come up where someone's looking confused in the back. And I think it's just an example of where it's easy to overestimate how much people know about the world and like versus how much people have seen in movies. I'm absolutely sure that Mission to Mars or other Mars related movies are the reason why some people actually do think we've already been to Mars.
I never underestimate how stupid people could be when it comes to space stuff.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
It was not 12 hours after we put out the last podcast that I was recognized not at an official event for the first time ever. And I was recognized by my voice. And the very first thing the person said to me was, "You're CGP Grey," which that was the funniest thing. The guy had not heard the podcast yet. He almost apologized. "Oh, I haven't listened to the latest podcast." And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, it just came out last night." And, you know, it'd be very unlikely that you had listened to it. But I just thought after our previous conversation that was very funny that the very first time I was recognized in person, it was with the words, "You're CGP Grey."
What happened? Where were you? Like, what did this person hear you saying? And like, talk me through it.
I was recognized for the first time in the Covent Garden Apple Store, of all places in the world.
Yeah.
And I was actually buying some stuff for Hello Internet. And I was in there and I was trying to use their little app where you can just buy stuff in store without having to talk to someone, which is my preferred way of shopping. But where I couldn't get an internet connection to work. And so I thought, I have to talk to the person. And so I just grabbed this guy and, you know, said, "Oh, can you bring up these items?" And I asked him if he had a bag for things. And he did the thing that I mentioned last time. I see people do sometimes when I talk to them, which is they kind of look away when I'm talking. There's like this particular, I'm trying to place this voice look. And I saw it in the guy. And this was the first time he was able to place it. He went, "Boom, you're CGP Grey." And then so we just had a little chat for a little while. We talked about podcasts.
So it was the guy serving you?
Yeah, he was checking out the stuff that I was buying.
Well, could he not just have seen your name on like your credit card or something?
He was reaching under the table for the bags that they have, so I hadn't actually handed him my card yet.
Wow.
But anyway, so that was the first time I was recognized.
Did you enjoy it or find it really uncomfortable?
Okay, so this happened to work out very well for both of us, right? Because there's two humans in this situation. And as I've mentioned many times, like I am not very social when I'm just living my normal life. However, this happened to be one of these days where I was busy going from meeting to meeting to meeting, and this was in between two other meetings. So I had already spun up the part of my brain, which is, I guess I have to deal with people all day long. And so I was kind of more prepared than I would normally be under these circumstances. And plus, I was already, I'm talking to a person because I have requested something from him. And so like I could not have been more receptive to this. So it went okay. But mostly I was just so startled that I'm not entirely sure really what happened. We just chatted for a little while, like I said. But
did he ask for like an autograph or a Graphy or anything like that?
No. I would feel really weird if people asked for selfies. I think that's, I'm kind of with the Louis C.K. opinion on this one, that it's like a weird, not normal human interaction when people ask for selfies. I'll link to this Louis C.K. video. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
It's the new autograph, isn't it? Like selfies, though. It's like it's just replaced autographs.
Yeah, but I think the autograph thing is weird too. I don't.
If you think, fair enough. If you think they're weird, then fair enough.
I mean, again, this is just like I'm just the worst person to have any kind of internet fame at all, because I was like, I really like my job, but I do kind of look at fame as a real downside of the job. It's just weird, and it puts me in a lot of weird situations. So this happened to be totally fine, but yeah, I think it was partly fine because he didn't say, "Oh, can I get your autograph?" or "Oh, hey, meet the other people in the store," or "Oh, hey, can I take a picture with you?" It was as normal of an interaction as it could possibly be between two humans. So I think that's also partly why it went well. So it was a very good meeting to be my first meeting in public.
He treated you gently for your first time.
Yes, he did. He did treat me gently.
Sounds like a good one. All right.
It's funny. I guess I'm a little sensitive to this sometimes because even when I was a teacher, being a teacher is kind of like being a very, very small scale celebrity. And something that would happen to me when I was teaching is if I was just out with my wife, sometimes students would see us and just like yell from across the street, "Mr. Gray," and they'd come running over, and you'd have just this bizarre interaction. And I think teachers, in a way, who live near where their students are, have a tiny view into what real celebrity life is like for super famous people. Of like, you're just walking along, and you can't have a normal day out. People are just going to yell at you from across the street and come running up and then be really weird and awkward. That's partly why I'm more sensitive to this than most of the people I know, because I feel like I've had a tiny taste of it in my previous job. All of the people at my regular places, pubs, restaurants, cafes, I am recognized now as a regular. They don't know me as CGP Grey, but it's I can walk in and the girl's like, "Oh, hi, let me get you what you normally get." And it has all happened everywhere all of a sudden. And
that's nice though, isn't it? Isn't that a nice thing?
I can't go to any of these places anymore now. That's
crazy, Gray. That's what community is about. This is what a community is. People long for that. People now say, whatever happened to the good old days where people knew each other by face and name and knew what each other liked? And you are lucky you are getting a taste of that in a big city like London, and you're turning your back on it.
Oh, I luckily there are many Starbucks by me, but I have already burned through a couple of them where they recognize me as the person. I figure as soon as I walk in there and they know what drink I want before I order it, I have to go somewhere else now. I can't go here anymore. And I have to wait until it's long enough that they've forgotten who I am, or there's a change of staff. That's
why?
That's
why,
what I
for
want
goodness?
to have happen.
Surely Mr. Efficiency would see the efficiency of this and say, well, this is brilliant.
No, because look, I'm from, all I can think of, for example, is delis in New York. If you go to order a deli sandwich in New York, even if you go to the same place every day, the guy behind the counter will barely acknowledge who you are, even if he sees you all the time, because they are great about actually moving the line. Like, we've got to keep making these egg bagels all morning, buddy. We don't have time to chat about anything, and they just keep moving you through. So there can be a little bit of efficiency. Like, oh, right, yeah, 2 eggs and bacon cheese on a roll, sesame roll, great, boom, done. Move down there, pay for it, pick it up. What I find is like in several of the cafes or in the pubs, as soon as they know you as the regular, they want to have like a little chat now. And so they go, "Oh, how is your day doing?" And that is like, "Oh God, please, let's not do this."
So that's what you're running away from, social interaction.
Let's not have a pretend conversation about how my day is, and then I ask you how your day is. And we have to, can't we just stand here in silence while, you run my credit card or I order the food or something? Isn't that much better where we both kind of look away from each other and sort of pretend like we're not there?
Well, that's not a good attitude, Gray.
Yeah.
So basically you're thinking, oh, this is good. I'll just go through 50,000 credit card transactions and then I'll die, not having spoken to anyone or shared the joy of my time on Earth with other human beings.
If I'm getting a sandwich, I just want to get the sandwich and I just want to sit down. I don't want to have... Here's the thing. It's never going to be a real social interaction between you and the other person. So it has to be this horribly painful pretend social interaction. And
that's how it starts, but maybe over 5 or 6 years it would develop into something else.
No, it can't possibly. No, it's not going to happen. So I have to change places when I get recognized.
Well, I walk the dogs at the park, at the garden every morning, and I think it's wonderful as you get to know people and they get to know your dogs. And it's Audrey. How's she doing? Oh, I saw her a week ago, and she was playing with a black dog. And like you have little chats, and you walk along next to each other for a few meters, and you comment on the weather or the car parking or the trees. And I love it.
That is also an entirely different scenario, because you're walking the dog. You're kind of explicitly on a break to interact with people. I could see walking a dog through a park and talking to people and meeting with. Okay, that's fine. That's kind of different, but it's the pretend social interaction at a kind of commercial exchange. I want to get my drink and give you money for it, and then get on with whatever I'm doing is just as fast as humanly possible. That's what I'm there for.
I used to go to this bar in Nottingham, and at the time my drink was gin and tonic, and I used to go there quite a lot. And they always put like a lime in your gin and tonic. And for some reason, I don't like that. I like it being put in there just to give it a bit of lime maybe. But they would always make my gin and tonic, and then I would just take out the lime between my finger and my thumb and just leave it on the bar, and then just like walk off and have my drink. And that happened so much. They got to know that. So they just stopped making my gin and tonic with a lime, which I thought was, good. And I'll never forget one day I was there at the bar and it was packed, and there were, hundreds of people ordering drinks, and I ordered a gin and tonic, and there was a new woman working behind the bar, and she made my gin and tonic and she put a lime in it. And one of the other bartenders leaned across to her and said, "He doesn't have limes in his gin and tonics." And I actually really liked that. Like, it was like, it's like ultimate customer service. Like, this is awesome. They even know how I like my drink. And if one of the others does it wrong, it's like self-correcting as well. Like, I quite liked it. And yes, it did mean I went there too often, but I liked it.
If I could just get the benefits without the downsides, I would be on board with this as well. If I didn't have to actually order, if I could just pay for it and they'd have the thing, that'd be great, because I am a creature of habit, so I do stuff the same all the time. But yeah, whenever I'm recognized, it's like, oh, I can't come here for a while anymore, and I'm running out of places. This is the problem.
I think that's really sad, and I think you shouldn't feel that way. But
let me tell you a story that you will feel the saddest about then.
Okay.
A while back at what used to be my closest Starbucks, I happened to be online. I was going to get coffee, as I normally do, and the dude ahead of me online was one of these people who, there's a very good saying in life, which is, if everybody around you is an asshole, you're actually the asshole, right? Where it's like, if absolutely everybody else seems to be causing you problems, you're the problem. And this guy was you could just tell right away, he's one of these people who's just a jerk. But he thinks everybody else is a jerk. And so he got into a disagreement with the guy behind the counter at the Starbucks over some nonsense, like the credit card transaction or whatever it was. I can't quite remember the details anymore, but it was one of these cases where the dude was clearly in the wrong, and the Starbucks guy was doing everything he could to possibly placate this person. But the guy ended up being like, okay, I happen to work at this big company, and give me your name, and I know the managers at Starbucks. I'm going to contact them and tell them how terrible you are, and blah, blah, blah. So he kicked up this big fuss. And after he left, I told the Starbucks guy, oh, hey, why don't you give me your name as well? Give me an email address so I can write to them and say, look, I was online, I saw this altercation, and this guy was totally just a jerk, and the manager handled it very well, which was the case. I took his name and his email address, and I wrote it in, and it actually was like a thing. Like, Starbucks wrote back and said, oh, thanks. Yes, we had a report from this other person. Apparently, like, something actually happened. And then from that point on, this guy in Starbucks was the nicest guy in the world to me. Every time I went in, he would make sure that everybody else put my drink right to the front of the line. Oh God, I don't want this special treatment. I don't want this special treatment. Please don't do this. And he was just super, super friendly. And I eventually figured out what days he works. He works there on Fridays and on the weekends. And as far as I know, I haven't been back to that Starbucks in, I think, about 2.5 years now on a Friday or a weekend. I pass by it all the time. I still see him in there, but I always feel like, nope, if it's Friday or the weekend, I'm going to the further one. I can't do it. So the bottom line of this is that no good deed goes unpunished, I think, is the moral of this story.
Professor Mike Merrifield, who you know and have met a few times,
yes.
He's in some of my videos. He was telling me a story. He has his local garage. He goes where he gets fuel or gas for our American friends, and he was in there one time paying for his petrol, and the place got held up. A guy came in with a gun. Held up the place. Robbed. Police came. All that sort of stuff. No one was hurt, but the guy behind the counter got held up, and Mike was in the store at the time. He was like the innocent bystander witness. And Mike was saying he still goes back to that garage all the time and buys fuel. And every time that guy serves him and they see each other, there's kind of this sort of weirdness between them. That I'm the guy that was standing in the corner at the time you got held up with the gun. And there's a real awkward dynamic between them that won't go away, and they're kind of, it's always going to be there because they went through this thing together, and they don't know each other or anything. They don't know each other. They were just the two guys in the room when the gunman came in.
I could never go back.
By the way, I also will hold up my hands now and acknowledge what a tremendous mistake it was of me to ask everyone who wasn't on a plane to send us a tweet to say that they weren't on a plane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you thought it was like a funny joke at the time. I did not.
I didn't think people would take it so seriously. I thought people would listen and have a chuckle and think, imagine if people did that, wouldn't it be funny? And like get on with their life. I didn't think they would then take out their device and write the tweet.
Yeah. I mean,
but they did.
I don't want to be overly dramatic here, but you basically made my Twitter unusable for a day and a half. I've just so many at replies of just like, oh God. If I was going to be on Twitter more, I would have had to set up an actual filter, to try to like clear all of this stuff. But you can't have a podcast with as many listeners as we have now and ask them all, like every single one of them, to tweet at you. But you know what
since when do they do everything I say? Okay, can I just say to all the people out there listening, can you also please subscribe to my Numberphile YouTube channel and Periodic Videos and 60 Symbols, and sign up to my Patreon and the Hello Internet Patreon and donate vast sums of money to us? Yeah, but they're not all going to go and do that now, are they?
Yeah, because sending a tweet is funny and it takes 2 seconds. Of course they're going to do it.
Well, it was a mistake. I'm sorry, Gray.
Yeah, but you know what? You're going to have to live with this mistake for forever, because just like we got the St. Bernard feedback from episode 4 or whatever, right? People who listen chronologically for the rest of time are going to tweet at us when they get to that point and go, "Oh, I'm not on a plane right now." And it's 5 years in the future or 100 years in the future, and we're dead and we're still getting tweets from people about how they're not on airplanes. That's what you've done. Here's the situation with me. Here's why I'm bringing this up.
Mm-hmm.
I kept dealing with my wife's iPhone 5. And as I mentioned, every time I picked it up, I thought it was like a little happy sound from heaven descended upon me when I picked up her iPhone 5. And I was like, oh, this is just the right size. I can use it in my hand. And I've tried everything. I like the D brand case. That's the best. I tried using it without a case. I've tried absolutely everything, but I kept just finding myself, like you, just not liking the phone, just how it's the wrong size. And I kept picking up my wife's old iPhone and thinking, this size is really good. And so I thought, I have to make a change here.
You did not.
I can't live like this anymore.
Tell me. You didn't, did you?
What do you think I did?
Have you gone down to a 5S?
I actually went up to a 6 Plus.
Idiot.
Did you just call me an idiot?
Yeah. 6 Plus?
Okay, so listen. Hold on. I kept picking up my wife's old phone and really liking it.
Do you realize that's smaller than your phone, right?
Would you let me finish? Here?
Go on.
But so I also, every single time I walked by an Apple store, I would look at the 6 Plus. And every time I would look at the 6 Plus, I thought, this phone is just ridiculous. It's like a boat. It's so huge, it doesn't make any sense. But I kept being aware of the fact that I kept looking at the 6 Plus. And I've been doing this ever since it came out, right? For months now, since September. And so my frustrations just kept growing with the regular 6. And I was coming to a point where I thought, I'm going to have to do something about this because I just don't like this phone. But I was afraid about Apple just never making a smaller phone again. Like, okay, well, I don't want to do that, like step backwards in technology. And then, well, Apple's left anyway on their rocket spaceship to the future and they're not dealing with smaller phones. So what are you going to do? Use a 5 until the end of time? No, you're not. So while all of this was going on, I was just trying to think about, well, what to do. A friend of mine, Mike Hurley, who runs the excellent Relay podcast network here in London, Mike has been pushing the 6 Plus from the very start and trying to get everybody on the 6 Plus train. And I've been listening to him talk about this on podcasts for a while, and I've been listening to him talk about it in person when we've met up a couple of times. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. There's a 14-day return policy. I'm going to take Mike's advice. I'm going to buy the 6 Plus and just try using it for a little while to see how it is. And I'm here to say that Mike was right. And I love my 6 Plus. I am totally on board with this phone in just the way that you should be with an Apple product. I have no ambivalence about it whatsoever. And I should have gotten the 6 Plus right from the start. So
what about, I guess you don't talk on your phone a lot though. What about when you hold it up to your face and it's like pressing a dinner plate up against your ear?
I almost never talk on the phone.
Well, if you never talk on it as a phone, I start to see the sense in it because then it's just becoming a small iPad.
Okay.
But if you want to use it as a phone, or if you're an action man who's hard as nails and, gets out and about and does things, you've got this huge, massive rectangle in your pocket while you're crawling around under cars and climbing mountains and things.
Right.
It's okay if it's just you sitting in Starbucks who uses it like an iPad anyway. But I think for people who want to use a phone as a phone, I'm not buying it. But anyway, keep talking.
No, but it's interesting because I actually use my phone almost entirely in transit because I have an iPad with me lots of times when I'm working or if I'm going out for the day. So it's not like I'm sitting down. Like if I'm going to work, I'll take out the actual iPad. And if I'm at home, I'll use my computer or an iPad. So I still use my phone very much the way I used to use my old one, which is in between locations. But what I find is you have hit on the exact point, which I think makes it very, very palatable, which is the iPhone 6, my brain thought like it's just the wrong size. It's just a little too big to type kind of comfortably. I can't quite use things one-handed. It's all frustrating. But my brain treats the 6 Plus as like, oh, this is a micro iPad.
Yeah.
And I feel like since my brain has entirely different expectations, all of the frustrations of the phone are gone because some part of my brain just keeps thinking, oh, this isn't a phone. This is an iPad Micro. Of course, you wouldn't try to use it in the same one-handed reach the screen everywhere way that you would with a phone because it's not a phone. It's a tiny iPad. And it sounds silly, but that has completely changed my experience. And it's why I love it.
I can imagine that because it's like the 6 hasn't quite decided what it wants to be.
Yeah.
And that causes me problems because I think I said to you another time, when I'm using it, it's like I have like cognitive problems using it. Like I used to be really quick at using my old, 5, and I'd press this and do that and move this. And when I use this one, it's like I'm like, what am I doing? What am I pressing? And it's like I'm drunk every time I use it.
Yes.
And I think it's just because I can't. It's not because I've changed. It's just that it makes me dumb.
I had a similar experience, which is the typing is frustrating or doing other things are frustrating. And so the big change with the 6 Plus is that I use it two-handed way more because it's just bigger. But the experience is much better because when I'm holding, like I actually can use the 6 Plus one-handed but the vast majority of the time there's something on the screen and you're holding the phone and your brain just says, well, you can't possibly hit that button in the top corner. This is what your other hand is for, right? And so your brain brings your other hand around and you press the button and it's a satisfactory experience. Whereas on the iPhone 6, everything is just reachable, but in a clumsy way, or, you have to try to manipulate one-handed to do it in a very awkward way. So the experience is terrible every time, but you can just do stuff. I use the iPhone Plus two-handed, walking around all the time, and I absolutely love it. So I have to say, if there's anybody out there who was like incredibly frustrated with their iPhone 6, the 6 Plus, that is the way of the future. Try it. This is my recommendation is put away your old phone and just use the iPhone 6 exclusively for a while, and you will get used to it so quickly.
The 6 Plus, yeah.
Sorry, the 6 Plus is what I mean. Yeah. You will get used to the 6 Plus so quickly if you put away your iPhone 6 and don't use it for a little while. And just last week, as I think I've had the phone for about 3 weeks or a month now. And just a week ago, I picked up my wife's phone that I hadn't happened to touch for a while. And that was the moment I knew that I had made the right decision, because I picked up my wife's phone and I thought I could never use something this small again. And it was no more ambivalence. It was like, no, I'm on the right path with my Apple decision. And the other thing I like about this is that I'm now on the same page with the kind of decisions that Apple makes, where Apple likes stuff every year to make it thinner and lighter, which I always found frustrating with the phones because I thought I want more battery. But the iPhone 6 Plus does have more battery. And now my primary concern is, yes, Apple, let's make this phone a little smaller, a little thinner, and a little lighter. And I'm happy to keep the battery life the same because it is noticeably longer with the battery. So I'm very, very happy. I happen to have a really intense day with the phone because I had a kind of overnight trip that I had to do. And so I was just incredibly active on the phone one particular day. And I was amazed that I made it through the entire day without having to charge it. And my old iPhone would have never made it. I would have been stranded halfway through trying to find an Apple store to buy a charger. But the 6 Plus had enough battery to last me through a whole bunch of Ubers and video and photos and email and a bunch of stuff. So I absolutely love it.
How come you've had an iPhone 6 Plus for a month and haven't told me?
Has it ever been relevant to any of our conversations? Has it ever come up?
No, because you didn't tell me.
I was also partly just trying it out, but I feel like you always want a lot of information from me, Brady. Do you want to know all of my new purchases?
No, not all of them.
Do you want to know what I bought at the Apple store that time?
Yeah.
I bought a tripod and a little attachable lens for the phone. Is that exciting to you? Is that interesting?
Yeah. What are you going to film?
Well, what I'm actually going to try to film is stuff for Hello Internet. I filmed a couple things since we're so far behind on the YouTube version. I thought, I can try this little tripod and a nice lens to see if I can get a couple of like time-lapse city shots to use to upload for the YouTube channel.
But I thought we were doing like office toys and things. You're thinking of moving away from all those little desk toys and that on the YouTube channel.
All I know is that the videos come from you very slowly, so I thought I'd take things into my own hands.
Well, you never ask me. You've only got to ask.
Okay. Is this going to be high on your priority list right now? I'm not even sure that it should be.
Well, it can't now because I'm about to go away, but...
Okay.
All right.
So what other purchases of mine would you like to know? What have I bought recently that Brady should know about?
I think an iPhone 6 Plus counts as one you should tell me about, considering I'm like a guy you talk about iPhones with all the time.
We're talking about it right now.
All right. I hope you're not keeping secrets just so we can talk about them on the podcast.
I'm not keeping secrets just so we can talk about them on the podcast. Do you know who I also didn't tell? My wife. She didn't notice that I had a new phone for, I think it was 10 days before she finally spotted it. She came home and I actually had both phones in front of me because I was transferring stuff from one to the other. And she happened to not notice. And then I thought, I wonder how long it will take her to not notice. And the answer was about 10 days.
And what did she then say?
Oh, she was just really interested, and she was also shocked. She couldn't believe that I bought it. But yeah, she was like, "You bought a new phone and you didn't tell me?" I thought, well, you didn't notice it first, and now it was just interesting to see how long this was going to take.
I had a funny incident a couple of nights ago with my wife where I couldn't wait. I must tell you about it, and it made me, because I just know how disapproving you would have been, and how it was finally something my wife and I do have in common when it comes to technology. Mm-hmm. She was sitting on the sofa trying to do something, and she had an app open on her iPad, and I think she had another app, maybe a calculator or something, on her phone, mm-hmm. and she was trying to hold them both at the same time and transferring information between the two, reading it off one and typing it into the other and then mm-hmm. typing back in. And I was like, why don't you just go and get your your laptop. She's got like a MacBook Air. Why don't you just go and get that? You know, you realize you can have 2 applications open at the same time on that, rather than this weird scenario where she was just holding 2 screens in either hand. And she was like, oh, I would, except it's like full. And every time I open it, a message comes up saying it's full.
Oh, the hard drive thing? Yes.
Yeah. So like, instead of like dealing with that, she's just stopped using that altogether. And now she's just using her phone and, iPad as as her 2 windows that she can move between. And I thought that's Miguel. That's something I would do.
Yeah, that sounds exactly like something you would do.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah. Anyway.
Are you going to get a 6 Plus? That's all I want to know. What do you think?
Well, no, because I can't imagine.
Does it sound convincing to you?
It does sound convincing. The only thing I remain unconvinced by, though, is like wearing a nice pair of fashionable trousers and a shirt out at a bar and having this whopping great rectangle like a miniature football field sticking out of my trousers. You know,
it fits in my pocket. It's in my jeans, and it just fits in my jeans. And I am aware that if it moves to the front of the leg, that I've developed this habit of kind of pushing it to the side unconsciously before I sit down if it's right on the front of my leg, because then it is a little too big. But if you try it, I really think you will see that it is not as big as you think it is once you use it for a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think I use my phone differently to you as well, though. Like, I want to be able to just hold it in one hand and quickly just peck something discreetly.
I thought I was this guy as well. One-handed usage was hugely important to me, and it turns out that I can get by just fine.
Well, okay, but your phone's modifying your behavior, so like, shouldn't the phone suit the behavior we want? Like, should the phone change us?
Yeah, but I have made small sacrifices in one-handed use, which turns out to be not as important as I thought it was, for huge advantages in all other regions. So it seems like it's a great trade-off to me. This is, like we've said in the podcast before, you want to pick something to amplify. And if you want one-handed use, you have to buy a 5 or the 4-inch phone, like the iPhone 5 style. If you want one-handed use, that is the phone that you should buy. And if you're willing to let that go, the 6 Plus gives you huge advantages. But I am more and more convinced that the 6 is the phone for nobody. It's the in-between phone that has all of the disadvantages of both. And that's why we have both found it so frustrating over the past several months. I also love the horizontal mode. I mean, I've always wanted to use my phone in horizontal, and so I use this one in horizontal just all the time, and the apps rotate. It is just the greatest. It is just the greatest. And I can do real work on this phone in a way that I wouldn't do on my other phone. I love it. I really recommend it. Mike was right.
I'm all right, except I just got charged an insane amount of money to have my car serviced. They called me up and they wanted to change my front and back brakes and windscreen wipers and everything, and I'm just like, go on, do it, just do it. And then he called me up and told me what it cost to take my credit card details, and wow, it was a pretty impressive figure. Anyway, I paid it, and while the credit card transaction was going through, I said, "Did you wash my car, by the way?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, we've got it all washed for you as well. It's really clean." Mm-hmm. And that made me happy. I was like, oh, that's all right then. If they hadn't washed it, I was going to kick up a big stink and, can't believe you charged all that money and didn't wash my car. But just because he said, yeah, we gave it a wash, it's like, that's all right then.
Is it all right?
Of course it's not all right. Of course not. But but it just, for some reason, I remember the first time I ever bought a car, and buying a car is a big deal, and I paid thousands and thousands of dollars. This was in Australia. Mm-hmm. And when I picked it up, the car salesman said, "Here's a little something extra for you," and gave me a wink. And it was like a bucket and a little car washing kit with a sponge and some shampoo and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was so happy about that. It was like, oh, that is service. And, I've just given this company thousands and thousands of dollars, and they've given me like a $2 car washing kit.
Right.
But it's funny how those things work. They make you feel special and happy and take the edge off.
So you feel much better about paying all that money because they washed your car.
It's sort of, I was all ready to be angry. Mm-hmm. And then when they said, "Oh no, we don't wash it," that cost like £20 extra. I was going to go, "Oh, it's outrageous," but because they had, I was like, "Oh, fair enough, good service."
So, if I'm ever selling you something very expensive, all I need to do to placate you is also give you something that is free and really cheap.
That's exactly how life works.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you go and buy like an expensive watch or something, they sit you down and offer you like, a sparkling water or a cup of tea, and they give you like, and it's like, oh wow, this is amazing. Like, wow, what great value I'm getting. This is the way it works with expensive things.
Huh.
Yeah.
I've never come across this in America, but I have come across it here, that when you go to get your haircut, they often offer you tea or coffee while you're getting your haircut.
Yeah.
Which I find just absolutely bizarre and difficult. The logistics of trying to drink a cup of tea anyway while someone is cutting your hair, that's no good. So I always just reject it.
I turn it down as well. You're right. It is hard to drink tea while having your hair cut.
Yeah, because where are you going to put it? You have to put it on that little counter that's 100 miles away from you. So you have to lean so far forward to pick it up. And it's not a relaxing situation anyway.
And you're already claustrophobic, and you've got that big sheet thing over you they put over you, and there's someone close to you. The last thing you want to be doing is having like a hot drink. And
yeah, it would be like if the dentist offered you tea while you're laying there. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? I know, I appreciate the gesture, I guess, but I think you're hoping I turn this down just as much as I will turn it down. So I don't know how we got off on this, but right, yes. Well, if I'm going to sell you something, I need to give you something cheap and free.
Well, no, you asked how I was, and basically I'm a bit grumpy because there's been a few grumpy things going on. I've had an accounting tax form filling out day.
Oh God, you have my sympathies.
Well, part of it's because of you anyway. So,
did you get forms for Hello Internet stuff? Is that what you were doing?
Yes, I had to do some of that. I had to deal with accountants, and I've just been in a bit of a grump today. I'm just going to say it.
So you're preparing the listeners for Grumpy Brady?
Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens. That depends on you.
Oh, yeah?
That depends on how much you help me, and how much you work with me on my anecdotes, and how much you work against me with just being silent and going, I don't understand what you're talking about. What's the point of this?
Well, I'm going to give you a free flower emoji right now. There you go. I've sent you a free flower emoji. Does that make you happy? Yeah? Do you like that?
Do you know what?
What?
That worked. It's cheered me up. I'm going to make a little screen grab of it. Oh, why can't I do that? Now I'm grumpy again.
I can't believe that meaningless token gesture worked.
Australia won the Cricket World Cup.
Oh, yeah?
And this is a cause of much joy for me.
Congratulations.
Made me very, very happy. And I didn't talk. The Cricket World Cup had been going for a month, but I hadn't spoken about it or done any trash talk or anything because I'm so nervous and pessimistic about cricket. I didn't want to say anything on the record that could be used against me. But now that it's all over and Australia have won, I just want to gloat a bit and say how fantastic Australia is at cricket.
How fantastic are they?
World champions for the 5th time. 5 World Cups.
In a row?
Not in a row, but close to it. And no other country has won more than 2. So that's how good we are.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Who's the next best?
I would say, well, the runners-up, I have to say the runners-up in the tournament were New Zealand, but I wouldn't say they're the next best. I would say South Africa or India are probably next best, but...
See, what I want is the ratio of wins per population whenever I hear about sports. Right? Because that to me is the relevant thing. Like, you should expect that a country like India or China or the United States would win way more sporting events simply because they have way more people to draw from. So you can find the unusually talented people in that group. That does
oversimplify things somewhat, though. Like it doesn't take things into account like cultural considerations.
Yeah, I understand. Like in America, I think interest in cricket is probably much smaller than it is in the UK or in Australia. But I still think it's a good metric. Like whenever the Olympics are on and they go, oh, America won 1 million gold medals. I think, well, Yeah, but I really just want to know how many gold medals divided by how many people live there. Like New Zealand winning a couple of gold medals is probably way more impressive than America winning 10 gold medals. Right? I think there's a big difference there.
But then that does lead to your sort of statistical aberrations too, where one freak person wins 3 gold medals from some country, and I mean, if you do that, yeah,
I still think it's a better metric to just try to compare countries. So, but it sounds like if India has won 2 and Australia has won 5, that Australia is doing quite well.
So, well, thank you.
How many people are in Australia? I always forget.
I don't know anymore either. It's in the mid-20s, isn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna guess around 30. Now I have to look it up.
It was like when I was growing up, it was always 18 million, but it's gone way up since then. Or was it 16 when I was growing up? I don't know.
Population of Australia. Oh, it's 23.13 million.
Can I just say,
yeah,
you've let me down a bit on the cricket as well, Gray.
I'm sorry, what have I done?
Like the first thing I said, like when Australia won the Cricket World Cup, I was hoping you would ask me questions, but I wasn't hoping it would be trying to kind of, would be about populations to figure out, well, hang on, how good is Australia really? Is there anything else you'd like to ask about the Cricket World Cup?
No.
No?
Is the trophy pretty? Is there a trophy?
There is, and it's a bit disappointing, actually.
Oh, what do I have to look for to find it?
Cricket World Cup trophy would probably do it.
Okay.
I'm not a big fan of the Cricket World Cup trophy, to be honest.
Cricket World Cup trophy. Oh, is it this golf ball looking one?
That would probably be it. Quite big, though. Bigger than a golf ball. But yeah.
I have no sense of scale. It's just a picture in the abstract. But
well, find a picture of someone holding it.
There are 1,000 pictures of this golf ball thing. None of them have people. Oh, there we go. There's one. It's a sphere as big as a human head.
Roughly.
That seems all right. Is it supposed to be a cricket ball, I guess? Are there balls in cricket?
Do you know, it never ever ceases to amaze me how little you know about sport. Just when I think you couldn't know less about sport, you say something else that makes me realise how little you know.
Well, I know they have the funny bats, and so they must be hitting something. But it never occurred. Like I know the guy throws something, but it just occurred to me now. Maybe it's like I don't know. What's the funny tennis one with the feathers on the end? You know what I'm talking about?
A shuttlecock.
Shuttlecock, yes, the shuttlecock. Right? Maybe they're throwing something like a shuttlecock. Like I'm going to assume from your exasperation that they are not throwing a shuttlecock.
No, they're not.
They're throwing a ball. Is it like a tennis ball?
They're not. You don't throw it. You bowl it. And it's
they're not
a tennis ball.
I know enough to know that is a bunch of crap. You might use the word bowling, but they throw it.
Gray, if a bowler throws the ball at the batsman, he is disqualified from playing the game. Players get banned for throwing the ball in cricket. Okay,
but this is going to be some nonsense technicality that if you do it overhand, we call it throwing, and if we do it underhand, you call it bowling or something.
Oh,
but
man.
you're throwing it. Here's my question for you. Does the ball? Okay, first of all, can we confirm it's a ball, right?
Yes, it's a hard leather ball, about the size of a baseball.
Okay, so it's like a baseball. So do they roll the baseball the entire length of the way to the guy with the bat?
No.
Okay, then they're not bowling it. It's not like bowling.
Oh,
have you seen bowling?
Okay, you're thinking of like 10-pin bowling and lawn bowls.
Yeah, that's bowling. Is not bowling. They're throwing it.
They're not throwing it. Throwing has a definition. So you do throw a cricket ball, by the way, but you don't throw it at the batsman. But the fieldsman can throw it to other fieldsmen.
But it's in the air most of the time, right?
It bounces once. It bounces once on the way down.
Okay, they're throwing it. Maybe we can call this he bounces it towards the guy. It's not bowling. I'm sorry, cricket. You're just wrong. It's not bowling.
Well, I have to say, when I envisaged telling you about Australia's triumph in the Cricket World Cup, I did not imagine we would be talking about shuttlecocks and throwing balls at batsmen. But there you go. You can't legislate for ignorance.
Nope, you can't. Anyway, I'm glad we've established that it's throwing.
Yeah, it definitely isn't.
No, but it is.
Yeah. One day we will do a podcast about cricket.
Yes.
That will be our final podcast, probably. But
yes.
But
I have agreed at some stage to go to a cricket game with you, in which I can probably ask an endless series of infuriating questions, and that very well might be the end of our friendship.
Do you know what? I can't think of anything more pleasurable than sitting at the cricket and just being asked questions about cricket for 8 hours. Like that's like my dream day.
You say this now, my friend.
But you have to be more malleable and let me explain to you that there is a difference between like throwing and bowling and things like that. You can't. It's not your job when I teach you about cricket to like prove me wrong. It's your job to learn.
Right. Okay.
Understand.
But as I will grant you that there is a difference between throwing and bouncing. So they bounce the ball at the cricket guy.
Right.
Yeah. Settled.
There are different it's like you don't say that the pitcher is throwing the ball at the batter in baseball. It's
sure
pitching.
No, he's throwing it.
Yeah, but you have a name for it, so you can differentiate between different types of moving the ball from one place to another.
Yeah, like you're throwing it overhand or you're throwing it underhand.
So we say, okay, well, let's call that pitching.
Right.
And let's call throwing what the fielders do when they throw the ball to the men on the bases and things like that. We'll call that throwing. So now we have different names for things. Makes it a lot easier to communicate what's happening in the sport.
Yeah, but not when you use a word that has a totally pre-existing meaning to mean something else.
Oh, man. I cannot tell you how much you are going to hate learning about cricket. Because in cricket...
You mean the sport named after a bug? Yeah.
Yeah, because in cricket, the word wicket has so many meanings that it is truly astonishing how many different things that word can mean in different contexts. Like, you can say, and like talking to someone who understands cricket, they know immediately what you mean. But if you don't, I was once working on writing like a little explanation of cricket, and it was the word wicket that has stopped me going ahead with it so far, because it can mean so many things.
This sounds like a terrible sport.
I love it. It's my favorite.
Great.
It's my favorite sport.
I'll watch it with you one day.
I look forward to it. I don't believe it will happen, but I look forward to it.
This will happen someday.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is not like going to Nepal. This will actually happen.
All right.
I always feel like, and I was saying to my wife on the plane, why on earth is the pilot telling me all this stuff? Our pilot came on and he was a super chatty guy and he kept telling me all these things that I just felt like, please don't tell me this. I'm just, you know what? Like, okay, the plane needs something fixed. Fine. That's all I need to know. But he starts coming on and he goes, oh, yeah, there's a minor problem and we brought in some engineers and they're looking at it. He comes on 10 minutes later and he's like, oh, we got a big problem here. Our hydraulic system is leaking all over the place. He's like, it's the landing components of the plane. He's like, this is a big deal. We're going to be here for a while and the engineers need to come back in. Later, he's going, oh, it's a problem not just with the hydraulics, it's with this. I'm like, why are you telling me this? I don't need to know this. I don't need to hear this. This is not information that is relevant to me. I don't want to hear about all the various components of the plane that are falling apart around me, right? Just has it passed the safety inspection to fly or not? That's all I need to know. And between then, you can just tell me, oh, there's a problem with the plane and we're working to fix it. Sorry for the delay. Who wants to hear all these details? I mean, do you want to hear I guess you do. You probably do. So.
I like a bit of info. Is there anything they could say that would make you get off the plane?
Well, I mean, you can't get off the plane at a certain point. You know,
There's nothing they could say that would make you demand to be let off.
Well, I mean, I'm not even sure that they would, but I mean, I guess I kind
of. What if he came on and said, we've had a bit of a problem with the hydraulics, and I'm not 100% happy with it, but we're going to go for it anyway.
I think I might not be the only person requesting to leave under
Do you know
those
what? I can imagine everyone would just stay silent. In England, at least, everyone would just be like, "Oh well, mustn't grumble."
Yeah. A lot of lemmings would just say, "Oh well, yeah, I'm sure." I
but
feel
what
like
introverted CGP Grey would get up and demand to be let off? Would he? You'd be the saber rattler, would you? I think if
the pilot was like, "I'm not 100% sure about this duct tape job they've done, but let's give it a go, shall we?" I think I would really try to get off that plane. Because again, I mentioned it last time, but I find when like you're flying over the endless deadly Atlantic Ocean and your mind just like I'm trying to sleep, but I will wake up and just suddenly think about thousands of feet below you is an endless black abyss of nothingness, right? And
It's not nothing. It's a whole lot of water and fish and
things that can eat you, right? And cold death by exposure. It's just like, and I think that on flights anyway. But then to have it in addition, like, oh, I wonder if they really taped that leak up good or not. Or this is not something that I really want to know about. So I'm always just baffled when the pilots want to tell you about stuff.
If at 30,000 feet the plane fails, the endless deadly Atlantic Ocean and its body nibbling fish are the least of your worries.
I hope. I really, honest to God, I hope. But
what happened then? So how did it get resolved? Obviously, the plane took off.
Yeah, eventually they took off, but we were on the ground for an hour and a half or so.
Oh, nothing.
Yeah, it would be nothing, except my favorite part of this was the air conditioning wasn't working. Ooh. They go, oh, we have to shut down the air conditioning while they're fixing the hydraulics. It was terribly, terribly uncomfortable being in a metal cylinder with a couple hundred other sweaty monkeys all generating monkey body heat. And I was just trying not to pay attention to any of it. But yes, eventually the plane did take off and we got there. But I'm always just baffled by the pilot announcements. Even just the normal ones, like when the pilot comes on, he's like, "Hey, let me tell you what the weather is in this city." I never feel a need for any of this stuff. I feel like they should have the little pilot channel for the people who want to hear this. They can tune into that and just leave everybody else alone. Nobody ever needs this information. It's available on the screens everywhere on the plane anyway. I don't get it.
I'm always surprised they tell you the heights they're going to fly at as well. Because that does seem that seems to serve no useful purpose, but does serve the possible purpose of scaring you about how high a plane flies.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, we're going to go to 28,000 feet and then we're probably going to then move up to 30,000 feet later on. It's like, well, I love planes and even I don't need to know that stuff.
Yeah. I don't get any of this. I don't know why the pilots talk so much. Every time they come on, I'm just, ugh.
Also, now that you can listen to the entertainment system and movies like on demand, so you can start them before the flight, it's always really annoying. Like, it's always like, shut up! I don't care that you're about to close the duty free. I just want to watch my movie.
Right.
Like, does everything have to interrupt the movie? I understand maybe if they say, sorry to interrupt the movie, but we're about to crash. Please get in the brace position. Fair enough. Interrupt my movie then. But don't interrupt my movie for all these inane announcements. There's too many of them.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this is why I don't use the in-flight entertainment system if I can possibly avoid it. I load up my iPad with everything I could possibly want to watch because in addition to just irritatingly stopping your movie, the pilot announcements are always so loud.
Unbelievably loud.
Right? It's like, oh, I'm sorry. I have tinnitus. I value my eardrums. I can't be exposed to random loud sounds. That includes your voice, pilot dude, telling me about what the weather is 8 hours from now in Las Vegas.
And I think dangerously loud. I agree with you. I think that how loud they are is dangerous.
Yeah. So pilots, maybe not so much talking.
Oh, man, we are such grumpy old men.